To the west of the mighty Rodu Imperial Palace, there stood a 9-storied Magus Tower. The entire building seemed to have been constructed from a single structure, and sat upon the earth like a gigantic beast. Only at night would silver light emanate from the tower, highlighting its status as the tallest tower in Rodu, as well as accentuating its status of the Holy Land for all magic casters on the Norland continent. At this moment, at the top level of the Magus Tower, there were 10 elderly magic casters sitting around a redwood table within a circular conference chamber. They were gathered for the Magus Tower's monthly round table conference. Only the elders of the Magus Tower could participate in that conference. There was an empty chair in the corner, presenting a slightly disconcerting sight. An elderly man with white hair and a black beard sat at the head of the table. So that's about it for what happened this month. The battle on the southwestern front has eased slightly, and they do not require our Magus Tower's assistance for now. There has also been less activity from the wicked dragons recently, so the civilians have been quite safe, and there's no immediate need to cull these wicked dragons, he said in a slightly jaded voice. As the great elder of the Magus Tower, Richard had been presiding over the round table conferences for over 4 decades. All of the elders nodded with relieved expressions. This meant that they wouldn't have to rush about dealing with wicked dragons in the immediate future. At their age, no one wanted to travel even if they did so on griffins. There was a magic caster with a portly figure, and his magician robe seemed to be on the verge of bursting at the seams. His name was Brent, and he put on a mocking smile as he said, "I heard that Krasua took in a disciple recently in Chaos City, and she's supposed to be a half-elf girl? That old fart has been selecting a disciple for himself for several decades. Has he finally given up and just settled for whomever?" "That's not necessarily the case. Hasn't Urian appeared as well? On top of that, I heard the two of them fought in Chaos City over this disciple, and in the end, both of them took her under their wings together." "Oh? Did that really happen? Those two old farts have been fighting for close to 100 years. Neither of them is willing to concede, but they're willing to accept the same disciple at such an old age? And it's a half-elf girl. Don't all half-breeds have very mediocre aptitude? Besides, their magic spells lay on either extreme of melee and long-range combat. If someone were to learn from both of them at the same time, they would be driven insane." Everyone began to discuss spiritedly among themselves upon hearing that. The fact that they were able to sit at the round table indicated that all of them stood at the pinnacle of the magic world in the Roth Empire. Even if they weren't 10th-tier magic casters, they were at least the most exceptional 9th-tier magic casters out there. It was exactly because of this that all of them had extensive knowledge of Krasua and Urian as well as the renowned rivalry between fire and ice. As such, they knew that it was almost impossible for both of them to accept the same disciple. If there were someone that could possibly apprentice themselves to both mages, it would have to be the elven princess that had stunned the entire Norland continent about a decade ago. Exceptionally talented was an understatement when it came to her. Only someone like her would be able to master extreme fire and ice magic as well as both melee and long-range spells. It was just a pity that she refused both Krasua's and Urian's invitation to take her under their wing. She chose to focus on life magic instead, and became the youngest 10th-tier magic caster on the continent at an astonishing rate, completely crushing all of the other prodigies on the continent. If it weren't for the fact that Mag Alex was too dazzling of an existence, that era was one that should have belonged to her. She had set so many records in the magic world that would most likely never be broken, thereby immortalizing her name in history. It's true. Krasua has already sent Arthur back, and is going to move all of his possessions to Chaos City, including his rooms full of gold coins. Looks like he's preparing to live the rest of his life there. The thin and gangly Elliot smiled, and said, "Deputy President Krasua has always been quite free-spirited. Even if he were to accept a half-orc as his disciple, it wouldn't really be all that strange, would it?" Everyone burst into laughter upon hearing that, but their laughter was tinged with a hint of mockery. "He's never held our Magus Tower in any serious regard." In contrast, Richard's expression was quite dark, and his voice was also rather gloomy. Countless prodigies had been sent to Crassus so he could choose a disciple from them. However, none of them caught his eye, and he ended up moving to Chaos City to find a half-elf girl. Now, he couldn't even be bothered coming back to the Magus Tower, and had sent a servant to pack up all his stuff. Everyone's smiles faded, and different expressions appeared on their faces, but none of them said anything. All of the older generation magic casters in the Magus Tower were aware of the conflict between Richard and Crassus. It could be said that both of them were imperative to the Magus Tower's current status. 50 years ago, Crassus had made sure that the Roth Empire's royal family gave the Magus Tower the attention it deserved, thereby laying down the foundation for this 9-storied Magus Tower. After that, Crassus resigned from his role as president, and Richard spent several decades to make the Magus Tower an indispensable pillar to the empire. As such, the positions of the two of them in the Magus Tower had always been quite a contentious topic. Even though Richard was the one who had selected the current panel of elders, Crassus' position in everyone's hearts was not inferior to that of Richard. All of the elderly magic casters sitting at the round table were well aware of that. As old friends of his, we should send Crassus a present to congratulate him on finally finding a disciple. Richard smiled as he glanced at everyone around him. His wrinkled fingers tapped gently on the table, and he continued, "Most of our disciples are middle-aged already, and most of their disciples have also become adults. I'll get George to deliver a present to express congratulations on behalf of our Magus Tower." "That's a good idea. He can take all of our presents as well." Everyone smiled in response, but there was a peculiar look in their eyes. George Dobson was the prized disciple of Richard's eldest disciple. He was a third-tier magic caster at just 12 years of age, and it was said that he was already close to the fourth tier. Even though there was still a substantial disparity between himself and Princess Irina from back in the day, he was still one of the top prodigies among the younger generation. Richard was also quite fond of him, and would often give him some instruction, which was one of the reasons for his rapid progress. For Richard to send a child like George as the present bearer was a little bit insulting. Furthermore, he was clearly intentionally trying to provoke Crassus. He was implying that the disciple of his disciple was superior to Crassus' disciple. That was quite a scathing point to make. "All right, then get Crassus' servant to accompany George to Chaos City." A cold smile appeared on Richard's face as he got up to leave. Mag scooped some rice as he asked internally, "Just tell me, how much will that grilled fish recipe cost? I'm a man with a yearly income of over 100 million now." 100,000 gold coins, the system replied calmly. Mag's hands immediately stiffened, and he asked, "What did you say?" 100,000 gold coins, the system repeated. "Holy f***ck. Are you trying to rob me? You're selling me a grilled fish recipe for 10 million won? Does eating the grilled fish grant godly powers?" Mag roared internally. "What kind of bullsh**t price is this? It's unacceptable. The recipe is a prize item, and under normal circumstances, it cannot be sold. If you would like to forcibly purchase it, then the price will naturally be a bit higher," the system explained, as calm as ever. "A bit higher? You f***ing call that a bit higher? I work my a**s off, and I can only earn about 500,000 a day. Aren't you going too far with that price?" Mag wore a sour expression as he tried to negotiate. 50,000 gold coins, that's the most I'm willing to pay. 100,000 gold coins, non-negotiable. The system remained unmoved. Mag began to calculate in his mind. He definitely wouldn't be able to round up 100,000 gold coins, and it would take him close to 20 days to earn even 50,000 gold coins. Furthermore, it really wasn't worth it just to purchase a recipe. If he continued to save up for a bit, he would even be able to purchase a strength point. Mag soon calmed down, and responded nonchalantly, "All right, I'm not buying it, then. Put the spicy grilled fish on the wheel, and perhaps I'll get it with my fantastic luck." Put in some extra effort to complete the mission, there are more fabulous prizes waiting for you, the system said in a tempting voice. At the dining table, Mag turned to Amy with a hint of curiosity in his eyes, and asked, Amy learned the flames of extreme frost today, what magic spell are you going to learn next? In comparison to Krasa's melee magic, Urian's magic seemed to be more interesting. Amy shook her head as she replied, Master Turtle said that I only have to master this spell in the next 2 days. With this spell as a foundation, I'll be able to cast many more spells, so this one is the most important. I see. Mag nodded in response. He didn't really understand what Amy was saying, but if that was what Urian was telling her, then he had to have his reasons. After all, no one on the entire Norland continent was a match for him when it came to ice-type magic. Ugly Duckling had already jumped down from the counter, and even though it had received quite a fright, it didn't appear to have sustained any actual injuries. At this moment, it was snuggling up against Amy's leg, attempting to curry favor with her. Ugly Duckling, you have to become braver. If you don't even dare to climb onto the counter, then that simply won't do. Look at big sister Zixie, she can even run around on walls. You're still too weak. Amy looked down at Ugly Duckling with an urgent expression. Meow. Ugly Duckling looked up at Amy with a pitiable expression as if to tell her that it was only a baby. Humph, who isn't a baby? I'm not scared of heights in the slightest. Amy was unconvinced as she pursed her lips. Ugly Duckling looked at Amy, then at the counter, and it hesitated momentarily before rushing toward the counter. Splat. Even with a run-up, Ugly Duckling only managed to jump up less than half a meter, upon which its head crashed into the counter. It slowly slid down the counter, and lay down on its back, looking up at the sky with a suicidal expression. Sigh, so be it. Looks like you'll never become a swan in this lifetime. Amy sighed before continuing to enjoy her meal. Mag couldn't help but smile, and shook his head upon seeing that. It really would be quite difficult for Ugly Duckling to become a swan. Outside the restaurant, the sweet and savory factions were coexisting a lot more harmoniously ever since Ricky's actions had united them. Furthermore, due to the rankings effect, there were many new faces who had come to the restaurant. They were initially quite surprised by the long line gathered outside, but that was an indication that the food here really was exquisite, so they began to look forward to dining there. Many people were reluctant to come to the restaurant due to the expensive prices, but there was still a lot of customers who simply couldn't resist, and so they ordered the relatively cheaper Rigiamo and tofu pudding. It was exactly because of this that many old customers missed out on the limited supply of tofu pudding, and howls of anguish erupted as they heard the news. Mag couldn't do anything about that. 800 tofu puddings a day was already his limit. If he wanted to supply more, he would have to upgrade his body in order to improve his cooking efficiency. Following the busy noon service, Mag went to the magic screens, and purchased 10,000 tickets from the Catering Association workers. Even though it was quite a heavy price to pay, it was a necessary sacrifice to ensure that at least one of his dishes remained in the top 30. On the second day that the rankings were released, the braised chicken and rice and Rigiamo still occupied the 29th and 30th spot, respectively. However, following the alliance forged by the sweet and savory factions, the 99th and 100th place sweet and savory tofu pudding had staged a resurgence, and were ranked 50th and 47th, respectively. One restaurant with 4 dishes in the top 50 naturally garnered a lot of attention. It had been a very long time since such an impressive restaurant had appeared. Damn it! It's still 31. Ow! That B** starred. I have to avenge myself. Ricky held his swollen face, and glowered at the rankings board while his other hand was clenched into a tight fist. His employee had 2 black eyes, and he said in a faint voice, Boss, we should go back, there are a lot of Mamie restaurant customers here. His knees were already trembling at the sight of the hostile glances being directed toward them. Let's go. Ricky's expression also changed slightly upon hearing that. He was truly afraid after the brutal beating that he had suffered the day prior. Those people didn't hold back in the slightest, and if there were to be a repeat of that beating, he would most likely be bedridden for a long time. The employee only dared to speak at a normal volume after getting far away from the crowd. He asked, "Boss, are we going back?" "No, we're going to the Chamber of Commerce." Ricky shook his head as he got onto a horse-drawn carriage, and said resentfully, "I'm going to make them pay for hurting me. I already reported what happened yesterday to the Chamber of Commerce, let's see what their response is." "Boss Ricky, we're already aware of this matter. We are currently in the process of formulating a plan as well. Just like you said, you were the one who was trying to smash the restaurant, only for the boss to send you flying as he opened the door, and you were then abused by his customers. As such, Mamie Restaurant is not at fault here. Besides, you don't even know the identities of the customers who had assaulted you, so it would be completely unrealistic to expect the Grey Temple or the City Lord's Castle to do something about this." Within a guest all, Mars appraised the enraged Ricky with a resigned expression. Ricky clenched his fists, and asked, "So I copped a beating for nothing? I paid for a guaranteed spot in the top 30, but my restaurant is at 31 because of that restaurant. Is the Chamber of Commerce not going to give me an explanation? I suggest you don't bring up the assault case again. As for the rankings problem, we've taken your money, so we'll try to work out a plan that will satisfy you. We'll clear away the obstacles for you so that your restaurant can enter the top 30, Mars replied with a smile. Cyril was still playing with the same colorful snake as he sat on the leather sofa. He turned to Mars, and asked, "What's the Catering Association's response?" "Board member Stanley says he's still verifying the events, and that he'll notify us once a conclusion is reached," Mars replied with his head bowed. "Verification? What kind of verification is required? Looks like that Stanley is trying to extort us for more money again. Give him 10 dragon coins, and tell him to resolve this matter as quickly as possible." Cyril pursed his lips with a dark expression, and said, "That Mamie Restaurant is a thorn in my side. It's only been 2 days, and they've already got 4 dishes in the top 50, 2 of which are in the top 30. If things continue like this, there will be more and more people filing reports, which will be very annoying." "Yes." Mars nodded. He then hesitated momentarily before continuing, "But, young master, what if they secured those rankings with actual skill? If we remove them from the rankings board, it could result in some negative repercussions." "Actual skill? How much money is that worth? Are you telling me that a mere restaurant can stand against our Chamber of Commerce?" Cyril pursed his lips with a disdainful expression. He tapped his finger on the snake's head before grabbing it by the head, and commanded, "Prepare 100 dragon coins. If Stanley can't resolve this issue, then give it to Warren. That old fart has been taking a lot of money from us these past few years, it's becoming more and more difficult to satisfy him. 100 dragon coins? Should I consult with the president?" Mars didn't immediately nod and agree as he usually did. "Why would you consult the president over 100 dragon coins? It's just an insignificant sum. The money we've used to bribe the Catering Association in the past few years is no less than 10,000 dragon coins, right?" Cyril looked at Mars with narrowed eyes, and said coldly, "You have to remember whom you're serving. The president is already an old man, I will be the future president." Mars bowed his head, and replied respectfully, "Yes, young master." "How could this be? Does that mean the Chamber of Commerce has been fixing the Aiden Square food competition for all these years? How can they do that?" Gloria was standing outside the door with a black silk hat on her head, and she took a couple of steps backward as she stared at the president's chamber in disbelief. She had come to find Jeffrey as she had come up with a few ideas regarding what they had discussed over the dining table, and she wanted to tell him about those ideas in person. However, she had just overheard that conversation between Mars and Cyril, and it had tipped her world over on its head. Even though she didn't like her sexist grandfather, she had to admit that Geoffrey was truly a legendary man. He had started with nothing, but created an enormous estate for himself in Chaos City in a short few decades. The Buffett family's banks were quite powerful, but the Chamber of Commerce was just as, if not more, powerful. As such, there was reverence and respect for Geoffrey in Gloria's heart. However, the conversation between Mars and Cyril had revealed the dark underbelly of the glorious Chamber of Commerce to her, and the stark contrast was quite a jarring blow to her. Cyril suddenly turned toward the door, and exclaimed, "Who's there?" A panicked expression appeared on Gloria's face, and she hurriedly picked up the hem of her dress before scurrying away. Mars opened the door just in time to see Gloria disappear around the corner. A hint of surprise appeared in his eyes, but his expression remained unchanged. Cyril put down the colorful snake in his hand, and asked, "Who was it?" "Young master, there's no one out there. Perhaps it's that fat cat coming to steal food again." Mars closed the door, and shook his head. "I have to tell Mag about this. Mamie Restaurant's food is so delicious, and has such miraculous effects, it wouldn't be strange at all even if they could dominate the top 5 on the rankings. If the Chamber of Commerce removed them from the rankings board, then that would be way too unfair. This is not what the Chamber of Commerce should be about." Gloria shook her head, and looked back at the mighty Chamber of Commerce building before slowly clenching her fists. A determined expression appeared on her face, and she murmured to herself, "This is not what the Chamber of Commerce should be. If this is the direction that Cyril is going to take it, then let me pick up everything that father has put down. Who says women can't do as good of a job as men?" Mag wasn't that surprised about his sweet and savory tofu pudding breaking into the top 50. His target was only for one dish to enter the top 30 as that would satisfy the mission's condition. After a brief rest, Mag visited Mabai's new forge. It was about the same scale as the old forge, but the display hall up front was a little smaller, while the working area at the rear had been expanded. At the same time, a new smelting furnace had been added, as well as a larger anvil. Lulu had stripped off his shirt, and was swinging a large iron hammer under Mabai's instructions. The red-hot piece of metal on the anvil was shrinking at a rate that was discernible to the naked eye, and a dull thump that caused his eardrums to tremor erupted with each and every hammer blow. "Not bad. Your task today is to hammer this piece of metal into a thin sheet." Mabai nodded with satisfaction, and he also began to swing his hammer to strike a half-complete longsword laid out in front of him. He'd had no intention to hire an apprentice, but Lulu won him over. He appeared to be a little dumb and clumsy, but he took his work very seriously, and was surprisingly quite clever with his hands. As such, Mabai was quite satisfied with his decision. There was a good chance that the cannon Mag had suggested to him was practically viable, but he would require a lot of time to craft a satisfactory prototype. If he could hire a helper in his forge, production would undoubtedly become a lot faster, thereby giving him time to work on the stability of his explosives. "Boss Mabai, are you starting work already today?" Mag stood at the entrance, and was a little surprised as waves of heat surged toward him. The fact that those dwarven craftsmen had rebuilt the forge in a day and night was already very shocking to him, and he was also quite surprised to find that Mabai and Lulu had already started working. "Hey there, Mag. We have a few urgent orders, so there's no reason not to get started on those." Mabai put down his hammer, and smiled as he said, "Also, I didn't ask them to excavate an underground tunnel this time. I'll go to the outskirts of the city after I finish this batch, then do some experiments in a secluded area." "That sounds like a good idea." Mabai nodded with a smile. He looked around at the forge with an expectant gaze. With Mabai's skills, in conjunction with the magic flames of this world, it would be quite possible to refine steel to a satisfactory degree. When that time came, he could also discuss building a steam engine with him. "All right, then I'll leave you two to it," Mag said before leaving. He had actually visited to see if Mabai intended to continue his explosives experiments in the forge. As such, he was very relieved with the answer that Mabai had given him. At the very least, he wouldn't have to be worried about getting blasted to death in his sleep. The sun is really nice today. The autumn sun shone down upon him, making him feel languorous. He looked at the tofu pudding mission counter in his mind, which showed 6/10. The highly anticipated wheel was about to arrive soon. That night, Amy had just taken a bath, and was sitting obediently while Mag dried her hair. She looked up with an expectant gaze, and asked, "Father, are we really going kite flying tomorrow?" "We sure are. We're not open for business tomorrow, and you don't have lessons, either, so I'll take you kite flying." Mag nodded with a smile as he ran his fingers slowly through Amy's soft hair, and only shut off the blow dryer after making sure that her locks were completely dry. "Yay! I love kites. I'm super excited." Amy leaned back, and rolled over on the bed before getting to her feet and jumping up and down with excitement. However, she quickly stopped, and a concerned look appeared on her face as she asked, "But, we don't have a kite. How are we going to fly a kite tomorrow?" "Don't you worry about that. When you wake up tomorrow morning, you'll be able to see a kite." "What kind of kite do you want?" Mag sat on the bed and stroked Amy's head with a doting smile. "I want a super, super, super big kite, and it has to be a purple bird, a super beautiful one." Amy contemplated the question carefully before giving a response. Her smile widened a fraction as she stated each requirement, and it was as if she could already see a massive purple kite flying in the sky. "All right, then we'll have a kite just like that tomorrow." Mag nodded with a smile. She had quite a few requirements, but with the system's help, satisfying them wouldn't be a problem. "Really? You're the best, Father." Amy planted an elated kiss on Mag's cheek. She then continued to jump around on her bed, and hummed tunelessly to herself, "Big kite, flying high in the sky, big kite, my big kite, meow." Ugly Duckling also began to jump around, but the bed was too tall for it to reach, so it could only jump around at the foot of the bed. Mag wore a wide smile on his face at the sight of his elated daughter, and he said internally, "System not selling." The system's resolute voice sounded before he had even finished his sentence. Mag's brows furrowed slightly. The system was growing more and more annoying. "I haven't even said anything yet, and you're already refusing to sell? Why can't you sell yourself?" Mag grumbled. "Please watch yourself. The system sells things, but that's different from selling oneself. From my studies, I have determined that the term selling oneself has very negative connotations," the system replied in a serious voice. "Oh? So what were your findings?" Mag raised an eyebrow. The system was becoming more and more intelligent. "From your expression and tone, the system can tell that you're discriminating against females," the system analyzed in a serious manner. "Who said I'm discriminating against females? They're earning money by selling their resources, and it's a mutually consensual business model, so why would I discriminate against them? No matter what they do, it's still better than those people who clearly have arms and legs, but still choose to go begging on the streets," Mag also replied in a serious manner. "That's not the point. From your response, I can determine that you're putting the system in the same category as those people," the system argued. "That's just your opinion, I refuse to comment on that," Mag responded with a calm expression before pursing his lips, and continuing, "All right, that's enough chit-chat. Tell me how much money it'll take to buy a kite from you? Business has been booming the past couple of days, so I have a ton of money." The system fell silent. 100 copper coins. Still no response. 200. 300? That's the most I'm willing to pay. At this price, I can get a high-quality custom-made kite. Mag remained unperturbed. "Could you add a bit more?" The system finally broke its silence. Mag contemplated that momentarily before conceding. 310 copper coins. The kites crafted by the system are all made with a super light yet rigid carbon fiber frames, with high-quality sandalwood line reels and super strong lines that can withstand 10th tier gale force winds. The kites are a must-have for holidays, and all of them custom-made, so you can state any conditions, and the system will design it until you are completely satisfied. The system's voice suddenly became quite vehement. So? Mag asked with a smile. 310 copper coins aren't even enough to cover material costs. Don't you want your kite to beat others from the starting line? Don't you want your kite to fly far higher than all of the other kites in the square? Don't you want to bask in the envious and admiring gazes from your daughter and countless other onlookers? If those things sound good to you, then for a limited time, we are slashing our prices not to 998, not to 888, but a super low 598 for a supreme quality super kite. The system's voice became even more animated. Show me what you got first, Mag said in a calm voice. In all honesty, he was a little tempted by the system's advertising. In particular, when he heard the part about the admiring gaze from his daughter, he was struck by the impulsive urge to place an order right away. No problem, the system responded. A series of kite images immediately appeared in Mag's mind. There were ordinary kites as well as kites of all types of different shapes and styles, even humanoid ones including Nami and Boa Hancock from One Piece, Colin from Code Geass. System, otakus wouldn't go out to fly kites, so why are you showing me all this random crap? Mag pursed his lips. He was finding it difficult to keep up with the system's shenanigans. You're an otaku, but you want to fly a kite, don't you? The system retorted. Hey, I've never been an otaku in this life nor my previous one, alright? Have you ever seen an otaku constantly on the hunt for delicious cuisine? Mag asked in a disdainful voice. But on the settings tab of your Weibo account, you ticked the otaku option. From that, I can deduce that you identify with being an otaku in your heart, the system retorted. I ticked that one for the laughs. Mag didn't even recall ticking that option himself, but that wasn't important. He browsed through the entire catalog, and still couldn't find a kite that satisfied Amy's conditions. Thus, he said, System, make me a kite according to Amy's conditions. Make it a badass one that can put all other kites to shame. Ding! The system is designing your kite, the concept art will be ready in 1 minute. The system's voice sounded. Mag was already used to the system's super high efficiency. After all, how else would he have been able to farm in the wind forest? After jumping around for a bit, Amy tired herself out, and fell asleep. Mag picked her up, placed her on the bed, then placed Ugly Duckling beside her, and tucked them both in. There was still a smile lingering on Amy's face even during sleep, indicating that she was very much looking forward to flying a kite. Ding! 10 concept designs have been created, please pick one. The system's voice sounded again. Holy F***ck. Isn't that a purple striped griffin? Mag's expression became quite peculiar after taking a glance. The first concept design that appeared in Mag's mind was a golden purple striped griffin. Furthermore, it was extremely familiar, it was the very same one as Mag Alex's steed back when he reigned supreme over the Norland continent. There were 3 vertical purple stripes on the griffin's golden lion head, making it appear extremely intimidating. There were also a few purple stripes on its powerful wings, perfectly complementing the golden hue and giving it a more regal air. According to Mag Alex's memories, he had encountered the griffin back when he was only 5. Back then, it was only a tiny little thing, and even after the two of them separated for several years, the purple-striped griffin was still able to recognize him. He was 15 years old during their second encounter, and the griffin was willing to become his steed. It was the final purple-striped griffin on the continent, and it was a super powerful 9th-tier magic beast. In the countless battles of Mag Alex that had been recorded in the history books, the purple-striped griffin was a constant feature. He sighed internally with emotion at the sight of that kite. After inheriting Mag Alex's memories, he had also inherited some of his emotions, and he recalled that the purple-striped griffin had been severely wounded during the battle 3 years ago. He wondered if it had managed to escape from those 2 9th-tier magic casters. I'll go with the third one, the purple phoenix. Mag's eyes lingered on the purple-striped griffin for a long time. His impulses told him to choose it, but his logic won the battle in the end, and he chose the beautiful purple phoenix. The purple-striped griffin was far too sensitive a symbol. It would definitely attract attention from many people, and even though his appearance had already been altered significantly, it would still be very dangerous if someone were to draw a connection between him and Mag Alex, as Amy was a fatal chink in his armor. Of course, Mag also picked the purple phoenix as he felt that Amy would like it the best. It had a long and colorful 3-pronged tail, so it would look very beautiful in flight. Ding! 598 copper coins have been successfully deducted, now crafting the kite. Delivery can take place in 5 minutes. Please specify the location and time for delivery. The system's voice sounded. Just deliver it in 5 minutes onto the counter downstairs. I'll have a look at it when I get up tomorrow. Mag changed into some loose-fitting clothes from his wardrobe, and set off to do his hourly pre-bedtime sword training. During the past few days, his swordsmanship had gradually improved. He had also been experimenting during cooking, and that had allowed him to chop up ingredients more quickly as well as helped devise a style of swordsmanship that was unique to himself. Of course, that was simply built on making very minor adjustments to the 13 swordplay forms. The good thing was that he was able to constantly drill those motions during his cooking, and integrating all that would help him when performing other sword techniques as well. In any case, all he was doing at the moment was to recover and grow accustomed to his body. "Father, let's go fly our kite." Mag was roused the following morning, and he was immediately greeted by Amy's beaming face when he opened his bleary eyes. His displeasure with being woken up abruptly disappeared at the sight of her adorable face, and he smoothed down her hair with a smile as he replied, "Sure, I'll cook some breakfast, and then we can go fly our kite." "Yay!" Amy rubbed her head against Mag's palm, and nodded obediently. She then looked at Mag with a curious expression, and asked, "But father, where is our kite? Did you really make a super beautiful kite for me?" "Of course, I've already put it downstairs. You'll see it when you go down there." Mag nodded, and sat up on his bed. He looked at his alarm clock, only to find that it was almost 8 a.m. It had been a rare sleep-in for him. "Then let's go downstairs." Amy was overjoyed as she tried to tug Mag out of bed. "Don't be in such a hurry. Let's get you looking nice and pretty first." Mag smiled as he got out of bed. He dressed her in a pure yet refreshing purple dress with a floral pattern, and braided a pair of intricate little ponytails for her. He then tied up the braids with a pair of purple floral hair ties, and a gorgeous little girl appeared before him. "I'm going to see the kite father made for me now." Amy hurried downstairs with Ugly Duckling in her arms, her eyes filled with anticipation. She should like it, right? Mag also slowly descended on the staircase, and a hint of nervousness welled up in his heart. After going downstairs, Amy fell completely silent. Mag thought that she was displeased with the kite, and he immediately quickened his footsteps. It would only take the system 5 minutes to make another one anyway, so if Amy didn't like it, he could just get another. However, after arriving downstairs, he was greeted by the sight of Amy staring up at the purple phoenix kite with Ugly Duckling in her arms. Her mouth was open, and her bright blue eyes were wide with astonishment as if she were looking at something incredible. Mag strode over to her, and patted her on the head before asking, "Do you like it?" "Yes, I love it." Amy nodded vehemently. She looked up at Mag with elation, and said, "Father is so awesome. This kite is more beautiful than any other kite I've ever seen. The other kids will be very envious of me." "Of course, your father can do everything." Mag nodded with a content smile at the sight of Amy's beaming little face. "Shameless bastard," a string of words hovered in Mag's mind, but he ignored it. But what is this bird? It's so beautiful. It's got purple feathers and a long rainbow tail. Amy was very curious as she caressed its long tail. Ugly Duckling also emulated her by extending a curious paw toward the kite. This is a phoenix. It's a mythological beast that most likely doesn't exist in this world, Mag explained with a smile. According to his memories, there were similar magic beasts in this world, but none were exactly like the phoenix. A phoenix? A purple phoenix, it's so beautiful. If only I could keep one as a pet. That way, I would be able to fly in the sky on its back. Amy's eyes were glittering as she envisioned riding a phoenix steed. Meow! Ugly Duckling looked up at Amy with an urgent expression, and waved its little paws in the air as if to emulate flight, reminding Amy of its existence. Ugly Duckling, you're too scared to even get onto the counter, you wouldn't dare to fly in the sky. Besides, you don't have any wings, so there's no way that you can take flight. Amy took a glance at Ugly Duckling, and shook her head with a hint of disdain. Ugly Duckling looked at the counter, and then down at the ground before burying its head into Amy's chest cowardly. It was too high up, so it was feeling a little scared. There were occasionally some customers who came to the restaurant, but they could only sigh with disappointment upon discovering that it wasn't open for business. The customers were beginning to get a grasp on Mag's personality. He was very easygoing and benevolent, but the restaurant rules he'd established were set in stone. No one could break those rules, or they would be placed on Mag's dreaded blacklist. After a simple breakfast, it was already 9 a.m. The sun had risen to the ideal point, and the conditions were perfect for kite flying. Let's go fly our kite. Amy jumped out of the restaurant with Ugly Duckling trailing behind her. Mag emerged last from the restaurant, with the kite held in his hands. Even discounting its long three-pronged tail, the kite was about as tall as a grown man, and there were specks of shiny silver interspersed with its vibrant purple surface. The color scheme was very exuberant, making it appear as if it really did have feathers. The kite was huge, but also very light, just as if it were completely weightless. Its frame was very rigid yet supple, and it felt as if the kite would fly into the sky as soon as Mag tossed it into the air. He was very happy with the level of quality, and he almost praised the system for it. However, he couldn't bring himself to do so. The system would become so inflated if he were to praise it that it would float into the sky before the kite did. Wow, what a beautiful kite! Is little Amy going kite flying with Mag? Zixie was feeding black coal and green pea at the entrance of the magic potion shop, and her eyes lit up at the sight of the large purple kite. I sure am. Father made the kite for me. Big sister Zixie, do you want to come with us? Amy was very proud of her father. Zixie took a glance at the magic potion shop before shaking her head with a smile. I really want to go kite flying as well, but I still have to work, so I won't be able to come today. Have fun with your father. All right, then. Amy nodded before turning toward black coal and green pea as she asked, Green pea, black coal, do you guys want to come? No. Black coal immediately refused. It was looking at Amy with a hint of horror in its eyes. I don't want to go, either. Green pea also shook its head. It used its red beak to smooth down its soft green feathers, and said, I can fly on my own, so I don't like to fly kites. Don't worry, black coal, I won't use you as an experimental subject for my flames of extreme frost anymore, Amy consoled. However, before black coal could heave a sigh of relief, she continued seriously, I'll wait until Master Turtle teaches me a second spell. The Honorable, no, the lowly Fama Odenben is sorry. Please forgive me. I'll do whatever you say, so please don't use that ice to freeze me again. It was so cold. Black coal's pitiable eyes were already shimmering with a film of tears as it pleaded with Amy. Amy looked at black coal, and contemplated momentarily before nodding in response. All right, I won't freeze you next time, then. Thank you. From now on, Little Black is your most loyal servant. You can tell me to do anything. Black Coal was so elated that his voice was trembling slightly. Then, Amy looked down at Ugly Duckling, which was just preparing to pounce on a colorful butterfly. Meow! Ugly Duckling seemed to have sensed Amy's gaze, and its body immediately stiffened. It was still recovering from the trauma of being frozen solid as well, and it shook its head with all its might. What you two are doing is wrong. Whom am I supposed to test out my spells on, then? Amy pouted with displeasure. Amy, you shouldn't force Ugly Duckling and Black Coal to be your test subjects. No matter what you do, you have to consider other people's feelings. If they're your friends, then you shouldn't force them to do things against their will. Mag looked at Amy with a serious expression. Really? Amy looked up at Mag with a hint of conflict and confusion in her eyes. Mag nodded. Using a gentle voice, he explained, yes. Ugly Duckling doesn't want to be frozen by your magic spell, so it's experiencing fear. That's a negative emotion, it means that it's not happy. We should try to make our friends happy, just like how you always try to make Jessica happy. At Amy's age, she had yet to develop a concept of what was right and what was wrong. As such, she required parental guidance to put her on the right track. Treat them like I treat Jessica. Amy's eyes gradually lit up, and she nodded earnestly as she said, I understand now, Father. Good girl. A smile appeared on Mag's face. Amy looked at Ugly Duckling with a smile, and said, Ugly Duckling, I won't use my flames of extreme frost on you from now on. Meow! Ugly Duckling was ecstatic, and it rubbed its head against Amy's leg to express its joy. However, Jessica never asks me to hold her, so I won't hold you again, either. You're quite big now, so you should learn to walk on your own, Amy added in a serious voice. Meow! Ugly Duckling's elated expression immediately disappeared. It looked up at Amy, and raised its 2 forelegs, trying to beg her to hold it in her arms. No. Father told me that I have to treat you like how I treat Jessica. If hold you, then I have to hold Jessica, but she would be too heavy for me to hold her, so it wouldn't be fair to her. Amy shook her head, and waved at Zixie before skipping toward the square. At that point, there were already many kites in the sky over the square. Ugly Duckling was very dejected, and it reluctantly switched its target to Mag. My hands are already full, so you'll have to walk on your own. Mag shrugged with the kite in one hand and the line reel in the other as he followed along behind Amy. He couldn't spoil Ugly Duckling too much. What if it grew up to be an obese cat? Meow! Ugly Duckling cried with indignation before trotting along behind the two of them. Its movements appeared slightly labored, but it was still able to keep up. In the square, there were many parents flying kites with their children. There was a massive circular plaza at the center of the Aiden Square, and it was paved with blue stone to create a very level surface. It was perfect for kite flying. All of the children were competing to see whose kite was prettier and whose father was flying their kite at the highest altitude. Father is the best. Our kite flies the highest, and it's the largest, and most beautiful one. A little girl with her hair organized into a bun clapped her little hands together. She was chasing a man in a black jumpsuit, and her little face was alight with excitement. There were several dozens of kites flying in the sky, most of which were small rhomboid kites. Those that were flying at an altitude of about 3 to 5 meters were already considered to be quite impressive. However, there was a large black kite among them that had reached an altitude of nearly 10 meters, so it was very eye-catching. Careful, Yaya, I'm going to fly the kite even higher. Daniel wore a proud smile on his face. He felt his pride very inflated by the envious glances directed toward him. Thus, he quickened his pace, and the line in his hand continued to unravel. The large black kite in the sky rose several meters further, leaving all of the other kites in the dust. I'm going to recover my glorious image in Yaya's heart. Daniel thought to himself. Last time he had brought Yaya out for a fun time together, they encountered a little girl with intricate little braids, and Yaya burst into tears as she wanted to have her hair braided in the same manner. It took him an entire day to console her back then. Thus, he had spent a lot of time and effort on crafting that kite. He used a line that was meant for fishing nets, and sure enough, it ensured that the kite was able to maintain a stable flight at a high altitude. As such, he was thrust under the limelight, and received his daughter's admiration. "Wow, that black kite is flying so high. Father, I want our kite to fly that high, no, even higher than that one. Father, why is our kite so small? Look at their kite, it's so big, and it flies so high. I also want a kite that big. Wah, I want it. I want a kite that big too." Many of the little kids in the square were very envious of that high-flying black kite, and some of them had already burst into tears. "All right, Daddy will buy one for you, don't cry." All of the parents looked at the black kite in the sky and heaved resigned sighs. At the same time, they were feeling quite angry. All of them were out to have a good time with their children, but that black kite had completely ruined their attempts to keep their children happy. Daniel's smile grew even more pronounced as he listened to the sound of the crying children. "Yes, yes, yes. This is the feeling I'm looking for. Wow, look, Father. That black kite is so awesome. It's flying higher than all of the other kites." Amy rushed over to the plaza, and looked up at the kites flying in the sky. She then turned to Mag with excitement and anticipation in her eyes, and asked, "Will our kite fly higher than theirs?" Daniel subconsciously glanced at Amy upon hearing her voice, upon which his eyes immediately widened in shock. "Isn't that the pretty little girl with the braids from last time?" A hint of foreboding welled up in his heart. His gaze then fell on Mag, and his footsteps came to an abrupt halt as he caught sight of the massive purple kite in his hand. "What the f***ck? How can a kite be that beautiful? And it's so massive too. Plus, why is it him again? Why is it always him and his daughter?" Daniel felt as if his heart had been plunged into a glacial pit upon seeing them. Was he going to be outdone again? "Father, why aren't you running? Our kite is about to fall." Yaya looked up at the black kite in the sky with a concerned expression, and then turned to Daniel with a puzzled look. "Oh, I'll start running right away." Daniel looked up, only to discover that their kite was indeed losing altitude, and he immediately began running again. After a while, the kite gradually rose again. "Humph, maybe it's just a useless piece of trash that merely looks good. No matter how beautiful it is, it won't matter if it can't fly," Daniel thought to himself. How could someone possibly be good at everything? Such a person simply didn't exist. "Wow, Mommy, look! That kite is even bigger and more beautiful than the black kite. Yeah, it's so beautiful. Daddy, I want it, I want it. Such a big kite must be able to fly really high, even higher than the black one. I'm so envious." All the little kids soon took notice of the kite in Mag's hand, and all of them aimed envious glance at Amy while exerting pressure on their parents to get them the same one. All of the parents were even more depressed upon seeing the kite in Mag's hand. Daniel's kite had beaten everyone else in altitude, but at the very least it was ugly. They could still console their children by convincing them that their kite looked better. However, that kite would absolutely crush everyone else's in a beauty contest. Their kites looked like flying pieces of trash in comparison. "I hope it can't fly at all." All of the parents prayed in their hearts. If the kite were that beautiful, and it could fly high as well, then they would probably get disowned by their children. Of course it can, and it'll fly even higher and better than theirs. Mag looked up at the black kite, which was hanging at an altitude of over 10 meters. He could easily reach that altitude with a normal kite in his previous life, let alone the custom-made kite that the system had crafted. If he couldn't beat such a crude kite, then he would be a disgrace to the system. He could sense the hostility in the eyes of the other parents, but he couldn't do anything about that. He prioritized Amy's happiness over the happiness of their children. As for how the parents were going to console their children, that was not something he had to consider. Let's fly our kite. It's going to fly higher than everyone else's. Amy clapped her little hands with joy. She was also feeling quite elated at the sight of the admiring gazes from the other little kids. Her father was the best, and the other little kids were all very envious of her. All right, then. Help hold the kite for me. Mag handed a corner of the kite to Amy for her to hold, and unwound a few meters of the line. He determined from which direction the wind was blowing before turning to Amy with a smile as he said, 1, 2, 3. Let's go. He quickly rushed forward a couple of steps, and the kite immediately rose against the wind. It's flying! Amy cried with joy. She also began to run behind Mag. She looked up at the climbing purple phoenix kite, and her eyes grew brighter and brighter as her face lit up with happiness. The big kite is flying. It's so beautiful. The little kids in the square were all staring at the massive kite rising into the sky. Their mouths were wide agape, and their eyes were filled with envy. The large kite rose into the air, and its lifelike purple feathers shimmered under the sun, while its colorful tail flapped in the wind. It was as if a real purple phoenix had spread its wings and taken to the skies. It passed one kite, two kites, countless other kites, and showed no signs of stopping as it approached the black kite that was flying at the highest altitude. H. Holy F***ck. Where's the justice? Daniel looked on with wide eyes as the purple kite passed the kites flying at roughly 5 meters virtually in the blink of an eye. It then continued to rise, passing his own black kite, and it looked as if it were going to rise into infinity and beyond. That's so awesome, the little ones looked on with astonishment from down below. They were asking their fathers to overtake the black kite, but they had been completely conquered by the large purple kite so much so that they couldn't even muster up any thoughts of trying to outdo it. Wah! Father, our kite has been overtaken. It's not the highest one, and that kite is prettier than ours, and bigger than ours, and flies higher than ours. Our kite isn't even good anymore. Yaya burst into tears as she looked at the purple phoenix kite. She'd been happy and beaming just a moment ago, but that seemed like a distant memory of the past. Don't cry, Yaya, Father will run a bit faster, and our kite will definitely be able to go higher. Daniel hurriedly consoled Yaya as he accelerated. The fishing line in his hand unfurled relentlessly as their black kite pursued the big purple kite. With that new injection of pace, their kite managed to catch up, and momentarily appeared to be keeping pace with the purple one. I believe in you, Father. Yaya stopped crying, and clenched her little fists as she provided words of encouragement. Go, Father! Make it fly higher! Make it fly the highest among all kites! Amy yelled happily as she ran along behind Mag. Even though she wasn't trying to be better than all of the other little kids, there was always a competitive side to children her age, so she obviously didn't want to settle for second best. All right. Mag took a glance at Daniel, and was struck by a sense of nostalgia. He then looked at the girl beside him with her hair organized into a bun, and he suddenly recalled who they were. She was the little girl who had burst into tears at the sight of Amy's hair. Daniel was drenched in sweat as he ran with all his might, glowering at Mag with a hostile expression, and Mag suddenly felt a little apologetic toward him. He had already hurt him once, and it appeared that he was doing so again. However, Mag certainly wasn't going to concede and let him win. After all, his daughter was still cheering him on from behind, so as a father, he couldn't let anyone beat their duo. Even though we were hurt by that black kite earlier, I really hope that it can win. If the purple kite comes out on top, then we'll be in a lot of trouble. Yeah, the purple kite is way too beautiful. I wonder if he bought it or made it himself. It would be good if he bought it, as that would mean that we could buy one for our kids as well, but if he made it, then we're screwed. All of the parents were staring nervously at the two kites. Even though they weren't the ones in the competition, the result was still very important to them as it would decide how much torture they would have to withstand later. Where were they going to find a large and beautiful kite that could also fly really high? Wow, look! That kite is so pretty, and it's flying so high. I know, right? I thought it was a really beautiful bird that had just flown over the Aden Square. The black kite beside it is a little ugly, but it's also flying quite high. It looks like they're competing with one another. The two kites flew higher and higher, attracting the attention of many people outside the square. If a homemade kite could fly to an altitude of 3 to 5 meters, it was already considered to be very impressive. A kite made by a skilled craftsman could fly a bit higher, but due to limited materials, there still weren't all that many that could fly over 10 meters in the air. However, those two kites had both exceeded an altitude of 10 meters, and they were still rising. All of the onlookers were both surprised, and filled with a hint of anticipation. They wanted to see which kite could fly higher, and as a result, many people stopped to watch the impromptu contest. Daniel was reinvigorated by the attention that was being afforded to him. He had expended extensive time and effort in crafting the kite, and he had only just created a scintillating image of himself in Yaya's heart. As such, he couldn't give up no matter what. He was almost sprinting, and the line in his hand was about to run out. Compared to the scrambling Daniel, Mag appeared to be a lot more relaxed and graceful. He had run a few steps to get the kite into the air, but after that, he had merely used the line to make some minor adjustments to the kite in accordance with the direction that the wind was blowing from. Even so, the purple phoenix was still rising very quickly and elegantly. Amy clapped her little hands together with excitement, and yelled, "Wow, Father is so awesome! Our purple phoenix is the best! Make it fly higher!" It was her first time flying a kite, and she had always been very envious when seeing other children fly kites with their parents. Now, her father had taken her kite flying, and their kite was more beautiful, larger, and flew higher than everyone else's. However, there was still a black kite that was persevering, and flying at almost the same altitude as the purple phoenix. That made Amy a little nervous. That black kite appeared to be very competitive as well. Yaya clapped her little hands, and yelled loudly, "Go, Father! Go, Father!" She looked on at the two competing kites with an anxious expression. That kite is pretty impressive, but if that's the extent of what it can do, then it won't be enough. Mag glanced at the black kite just as a gust of wind blew forth. Thus, he loosened his grip on the line, allowing it to unfurl quickly, and Purple Phoenix immediately accelerated in its climb. The black kite was left in the dust as Mag's line was quickly released. 15 meters, 20 meters, 25 meters. It was as if the kite had no upper limit. How could this be? Daniel was completely incredulous at the sight of the purple kite, which had almost instantaneously left his far behind. Snap! Right at that moment, the taut line in Daniel's hand suddenly snapped in the middle. The black kite was like a bird that had been shot out of the sky, and it came crashing down before plummeting into a bush. Daniel stared blankly at the snapped line in his hand, while a burst of wistful sighs erupted throughout the square. Amy threw her arms around Mag's leg as she yelled, "Our kite is the highest one! Father is the best!" Mag stopped the kite line from unfurling any further, and picked Amy up from the ground with a smile on his face. Her beaming smile and adoring eyes instilled within him a sense of profound satisfaction. The purple phoenix flew alone in the sky, appearing quite lonely in its invincible reign. "Wah! Our kite snapped! It's not the highest one, and it can't fly anymore," Yaya faltered momentarily before bursting into tears again. Daniel hurried over, and gently wiped the tears from her face as he consoled, "Don't cry, Yaya, I'll connect the line, and it'll be able to fly again." Yaya pouted as looked up at the big purple kite in the sky, and she said, But, Yaya wants a beautiful kite like that one. It's so pretty, and large, and can fly so high." Daniel's expression immediately stiffened upon hearing that. He'd been afraid that the conversation would head down this path. He'd thought that he would be able to somehow distract Yaya, but her focus still fell on that beautiful purple kite. I want that kite. I want that big kite. The big kite is so fun. The little kite isn't fun. I want that one. Father, didn't you say before we came here that our kite would fly the highest? It's not flying high at all now. Wah, you're a liar. Yaya was not the only child who was throwing a tantrum following the contest between the two kites, all of the other little kids also followed suit. The large purple kite in the sky was a completely different beast compared to the other kites below it, and the little kids could only throw tantrums at their parents to exert pressure upon them. Don't cry, Father will make you a bigger and better one when we get back. Hush now, I'll ask that man where he bought his kite from, and we'll buy one as well. All of the parents consoled their children while aiming hostile glances at Mag. He had ruined everyone's fun. With his kite flying so high in the sky, none of the kids were satisfied with their own kites anymore. Amy was quite perplexed at the sight of the sobbing children, and she asked, Father, why are they all crying? Perhaps because their kites aren't flying high enough, so they want to play with ours. Mag shrugged as he held Amy with one arm. He tugged on the line in his hand, and the purple phoenix did a somersault in the sky. Its colorful tail further enhanced the effect that the maneuver created, putting on a truly stunning spectacle. Whoa! That was so awesome! Cries of amazement erupted from the little kids around them before they broke down into even louder sobs. Stop crying, everyone! I know that my father's kite is super beautiful, and flies super high, so if you want to play with it, Amy looked at the little kids with an earnest expression, and consoled, then you can watch me play with it. The kids had just stopped crying, and were listening intently to what Amy was about to say when they began to cry with even greater ferocity. I want to play with it. I want it. She has such a beautiful kite, why don't I have one? Wah, Mag was quite amused. Amy sure was a kid slayer. Her words were far more scathing to the children than watching him flaunt their purple phoenix kite, but at the same time, there was nothing wrong with what she was saying. Father, why are they still crying? Didn't I allow them to watch me fly the kite? Amy was very perplexed as she turned toward Mag. Back when she didn't have a kite to fly, she felt very content just from watching others fly their kites. That's because everyone is possessive in nature. They always want better things for themselves, which is why when they see a kite that's better than theirs, they want to take it for themselves. However, the kite doesn't belong to them, so they can only cry, Mag explained with a smile. Possessiveness was a natural trait, and Mag wasn't using it as a derogatory term, it was simply an objective truth. However, the main cause behind the children's anguish was actually their parents. There was a little elf girl standing right beside them, and she was also quite envious, but she stood obediently beside her father, and didn't cry or scream like the other kids did. That was the difference between good parenting and bad parenting. I see. Then after we're done, we should let them play with the kite as well. That way, they won't cry anymore, right? Amy asked with a thoughtful expression. If you're willing to do that, then it should work. Mag nodded with a smile. He was quite glad to see the kindness in Amy's heart. Then, can I fly the kite? Amy looked up at the kite flying high in the sky with anticipation in her eyes. Of course. Just hold on to this line, and tug on it gently. I'll carry you and run around so the kite can continue to fly higher. Mag handed the line to Amy, and ignored all of the kids. Even after handing over the line to Amy, he still grasped the section of the line just below her hand. The force that such a big kite could generate in flight was quite considerable, so if he were to let Amy hold onto it on her own, she could get injured. When I say release, you let go, all right? Mag instructed with a smile. He then ran a few steps against the wind with Amy in his arms, and directed her to release the line. Thus, more of the line was unraveled, and the purple phoenix flew higher and higher into the sky. This is so fun! I love kite flying! Peals of crisp laughter escaped Amy's lips, and reverberated throughout the square. Ugly Duckling followed along behind the two of them, and occasionally looked up at the kite before swiping its claws at it as if it wanted to fly or grab the kite down. The little kids looked on with envy. They gradually forgot their despair, and their sobs petered out. All of them began to stare at the kite with rapt attention, wondering just how high it could fly. The parents finally heaved a sigh of relief. When little kids began crying, they could go on and on for an eternity, especially when they wanted something. Unless something more interesting was presented to them to divert their attention, there was no way to console them. Who would have thought that they would stop crying on their own? Daniel was looking at Mag with a resentful expression. He had come prepared, but Mag still managed to outdo him. Yaya had stopped crying as well, but whenever he saw the envious look on her face, he would feel quite disgruntled. Mag and Amy played with the kite for a long time. He wasn't an avid kite flyer in his past life, but he had friends who were professional competitive kite flyers, and he had learned many tricks from them. The kite that the system had crafted for him was already over the professional quality standard, so if he wanted to, he could easily get it up to altitudes of 100 to 200 meters. However, flying it that high would make it rather difficult to bring it back down later, so he stopped at an altitude of roughly 30 meters. Everyone could still get a clear view of it from that height, so it was more aesthetically pleasing anyway. All right, let's take a rest, and drink some water. Mag placed Amy on the ground, and pulled out a small thermos cup from his bag. He poured a cup of water for Amy, and wiped the sweat off her forehead with his handkerchief. All right. Amy held the cup of water in both hands, her face was lit with a blissful smile. She was really happy today. Daniel strode over to him with a solemn expression, and asked, "Can I have a word, brother?" Mag looked up at Daniel with a confused expression, and asked, "Do you need something?" Daniel was a swordsman, but Mag wasn't sensing any enmity from him, so he wasn't overly concerned. "Brother, do you have something against me? Why are you and your daughter always trying to knock me down a notch? Look at my little girl, she's bawling her eyes out. Do you think it was easy for me to spend close to 20 days to make that kite?" Daniel's expression immediately crumpled as he complained, "Anyway, I just want to ask if you're selling that kite." "I'm not selling the kite." Mag shook his head, and smiled at the resentful Daniel as he said, "But if your little girl wants to play with it, then we can lend it to her. We're pretty much done with it anyway. Yeah, little sister, you can play with it for a bit. I'm already tired." Amy drank all of the water from her cup before waving at Yaya. "Can I really play with it, big sister?" Yaya looked at Amy with a slightly incredulous expression. "Of course. But it's still mine, so I'm only borrowing it to you." Amy nodded with an earnest expression before reminding Yaya of the kite's ownership rights. "Thank you, big sister." Yaya was overjoyed as she spread open her little arms, and said, "Father, I want you to hold me as well. I want to fly the big beautiful kite." "All right, I'm coming." Daniel picked Yaya up, and turned to Mag with a grateful look as he said, "Thank you so much, brother. No need to thank me. What's important is that the children are happy." Mag passed the line reel to Daniel, and a hint of warmth flowed through his heart at the sight of Amy's benevolent smile. Mag, Amy, and Ugly Duckling played together in the square for an entire morning. Even though they had loaned their kite out to the other little kids, Amy was very happy to play with the other children, and the sound of their laughter brought smiles to all of the parents' faces. "He's a good person, after all. Even though he made all the kids cry, he's now making them all laugh. Indeed. His daughter is quite a generous girl as well. If it were my child, she definitely wouldn't let anyone else touch her kite." The parents that were familiar with each other discussed among themselves in quiet voices, and all of them wore smiles on their faces as they looked at Mag. "All right, time to go back and eat." Afternoon struck, Mag recovered the kite with a smile. It had cost him 598 copper coins, after all, and he was not generous enough to give away it for free. Amy bade farewell to the new friends that she had made before heading back to the restaurant with Mag. Mag took a glance at the rankings as they passed by the magic screens, and discovered the braised chicken and rice and Rugiamo were still at 29th and 30th place, respectively, while the tofu puddings had continued to advance, with the sweet tofu pudding taking out the 43rd spot, while the savory version came in at 44th. We weren't open for business today, so those rankings will definitely fall. If I want to maintain the spots in the top 30, then I'll have to increase the portions of braised chicken and rice and Rugiamo served. I'm pretty much already at the limit of the Rugiamo production capacity, but I could make an extra pot of braised chicken and rice. Mag withdrew his gaze from the rankings board. His target was only for one dish to make it into the top 30 anyway, so it wouldn't be a bad idea to provide more of that dish during the voting period. As expected, the next day, Mamie Restaurant's rankings had fallen. The braised chicken and rice and Rugiamo had fallen to 38th and 39th place, respectively, and the other three dishes also weren't doing as well as before. 29. Boss, our rotisserie finally made it to number 29. An excited voice suddenly erupted among the crowd as the employee looked at Ricky with elation etched on his face. 29. It really is 29. I've been dreaming about this 29 for so long. Ha ha ha. That Mamie restaurant or whatever must have been shut down. Their fraudulent actions must have been exposed, leading to their being wiped from the rankings. Ricky chortled like a madman. However, his guffaws came to an abrupt halt as his laughter aggravated his injuries, causing him to grimace with pain, but the excitement on his face was still plain to see. Tisk, that's only because Mag takes a day's break once every 6 days. Otherwise, you think you can make it into the top 30. Exactly. Mamie Restaurant wasn't wiped from the rankings. Even after closing for business for one day, they've still taken the 38th and 39th spots. They'll be sure to overtake you again tomorrow. Harrison and George pursed their lips, turning to leave. How? How could this be? Ricky's smile immediately froze on his face. He turned toward the second magic screen, and an incredulous look appeared on his face as his gaze settled on the 38th and 39th dish. He had thought that after filing the report to the Chamber of Conference, that restaurant would have been removed from the rankings for sure. However, its ranking had only slipped as they had taken a holiday. Business is booming for them, so unless the boss is retarded, there's no way that he would just take a break for no reason. Those two must have been lying to me. He must have run out of money, and was unable to buy those rankings, which is why the dishes slid down the rankings board. That must the case. Ricky consoled himself as he muttered bitterly, seeing as they've already slid down, there's no way they can get back up again. Let's see how you're going to exceed me now. Mag was already mentally prepared for a drop in the rankings, so when Yabami rushed in the morning with a frantic expression and told him about the rankings, he was actually a little surprised that the two dishes didn't drop out of the top 40. He swindled an earthenware pot from the system, and prepared to cook 3 pots of braised chicken and rice that day. I can't give up on the Haagen-Dazs ice cream recipe, but it looks like I'll be completing the wheel mission 2 days in advance. I'm looking forward to seeing what I'll get. An expectant smile appeared on Mag's face as he looked at the countdown in his mind. Just as Mag had expected, after adding a new earthenware pot, the supply of braised chicken and rice increased by close to a third. Thus, on the third day, the braised chicken and rice managed to claim the 29th spot on the rankings again, successfully forcing Ricky's rotisserie down to 30. The Rugiamo's ranking also enjoyed a steady rise, arriving at number 32, so it was only a matter of time before it cracked the top 30 again. In comparison, the Ricky's rotisserie ranked 30th was quite pitiable. There were even many people who were beginning to speculate when it would be forced out of the top 30 again. Erg! I'm so mad. My rotisserie was forced down a spot again. Your Chamber of Commerce must give me an explanation. Ricky stormed the Chamber of Commerce with a thunderous expression. A worker put on a professional smile, and replied, "My apologies, Mr. Ricky. Secretary Mars is very busy today, and does not have time to attend to you. I'll relay your message to him, so you don't need to worry. Your ranking is still in the top 30, and our Chamber of Commerce will ensure that every board member is satisfied." Ricky opened his mouth to say something, but he thought about it, and closed his mouth again. He nodded, and said, "All right, then. I trust that the Chamber of Commerce will have my back." That night, Mag had just locked the restaurant door when the system's voice sounded in his mind. Ding! Congratulations on completing the tofu pudding mission. The reward for the mission's completion is a chance to win a prize from the God of Cookery Lucky Draw. You have already unlocked the God of Cookery upgrade wheel. Would you like to draw a prize tonight? Tonight. Of course. Mag immediately replied. He had been looking forward to this upgrade wheel for a long time. Amy had asked him a few times during the past few days about when she would be able to taste the super delicious food, and he could only placate her with ambiguous answers. Whether he could fulfill his promise or not would depend on the spin of this wheel. Just as Mag's voice fell, a large wheel appeared, upon which there were 7 even sections. Those sections were, plus 0.5 strength, high-quality wine fermentation method, secret black pepper steak recipe, better luck next time, spicy grilled fish recipe. The most attractive of those available prizes was naturally the plus 0.5 strength point. After all, that was something that could directly contribute to an increase in power and combat prowess. However, Mag still wanted the spicy grilled fish recipe the most. Grilled fish was one of his favorite foods, and whenever he visited Sichuan or Chongqing, he would always eat many meals of spicy grilled fish. The spicier, the better. Amy also wanted to eat fish, so that was the most sought-after prize for him on that wheel. At the very center of the wheel was the number 1, which most likely indicated that he only had one chance to spin the wheel. Mag took a glance at Amy, who was about to fall asleep with her head resting on the counter, and hesitated momentarily before making his way over to her. He held her in his arms, and scaled the steps with a smile as he said, "Amy, you can't sleep before you brush your teeth and wash your face. We have to be nice and clean before we go to bed." After tucking Amy and Ugly Duckling in, Mag planted a kiss on Amy's forehead before lying down in his own bed. He looked at the large wheel with a serious expression, and asked, "System, are you sure you can't remove the better luck next time from the wheel? Any statistical game is made more interesting and stimulating with a dud option. In order to make your path to becoming a god of cookery more interesting, the system insists on retaining the better luck next time option. At the same time, I swear upon my integrity and moral principles that the lucky draw will be fair," the system replied in a serious voice. "Can you swear on something else instead?" Mag wasn't convinced that the system had any integrity or moral principles. "Please do not doubt the system's integrity and moral principles." The system's voice rose a few octaves. "How do I doubt something that doesn't exist?" Mag pursed his lips. "Rest assured, the system will not participate in this lucky draw activity. If you do not trust the system, then you can use a physical wheel to conduct the lucky draw." The system chose to concede. "Oh, right. I forgot that I bought a physical wheel." Mag's eyes lit up upon hearing that. A lucky draw opportunity was quite difficult to come by. In order to prevent the shameless system from intentionally making the wheel land on the better luck next time prize, it was much better to be safe than sorry. Thus, Mag dragged out the wheel that he had purchased from the system from the neighboring room. The wheel was identical to the one in his mind, with 7 sections upon which were inscribed different options. You only have one opportunity, and no test spins. After you spin the wheel, you must accept the result regardless of what it lands on. I wish you good luck." The system's sincere voice sounded. "All right." Mag looked at the large wheel, and he could feel his heart rate accelerating. He took a deep breath before grabbing onto the wheel, and gave it a good spin. The wheel began to rotate at a high speed, the pointer clacked over and over again as it came into contact with the spokes on the edge of the wheel. Mag stared at the pointer with an intense unblinking gaze. The wheel gradually began to decelerate. When it was close to stopping near the better luck next time prize, Mag felt his heart skip a beat. If it were to stop there, he was about to tear his hair out by the roots. However, in the final moment, the wheel mustered up the tiny shred of gas it had left, and ticked over to the next section. Spicy grilled fish! Mag exclaimed before immediately clamping his hands over his mouth. He shot a glance toward the other room as elation shimmered in his eyes. Congratulations, you have received the spicy grilled fish recipe. The prize is ready to be claimed at any time. You can enter the test field for the God of Cookery to practice your new dish. The system's voice was tinged with a hint of disappointment. Mag was in a very good as he saw the grilled fish experience bag appear in his mind, but he pursed his lips, and asked, System, you were hoping that I would land on better luck next time, right? Please do not doubt the system's goodwill, the system retorted in a serious voice. All right, I'm in a good mood today, so I won't argue with you. Mag put the large wheel away before making his way toward the room. Seeing as he had already received the experience bag, and it wasn't very late yet, he naturally had to learn how to cook this delicious spicy grilled fish so he could make it for Amy the next day. After lying back down on his bed, Mag immediately opened the golden experience bag. Countless strings of information flowed into his mind. Making a delicious spicy grilled fish was quite an in-depth skill. The spicy grilled fish was a similar dish to Wanzo grilled fish in that it involved grilling before braising. However, there weren't that many ingredients, and the main focus was placed on the natural flavor of the fish. The degree of spiciness could be moderated in accordance with the customer's wishes. There were 4 levels, consisting of mildly spicy, medium spice, super spicy, and insanely spicy. Due to the fact that it was a spicy grilled fish, there was no option without any spiciness. For Mag, the medium spice level was the most suitable. In reality, in Sichuan dishes, medium spice was already very spicy. Those who could eat dishes at the super spicy level were truly brave warriors. As for the insanely spicy level, Mag didn't know who would be able to stomach that. Perhaps only truly insane people would be able to eat dishes at that level. After going through the recipe in his mind, he had already perfectly integrated the information into his mind. If it weren't for the fact that he knew that the memories had been planted into his mind by the system, he could easily mistake himself for a master spicy grilled fish chef in his past life. Mag pushed open the door to the test field for the God of Cookery, and murmured to himself, looks like cooking a good spicy grilled fish really isn't an easy task. A white light flashed, and Mag appeared in a completely sealed-off kitchen. He had already completely digested the memories surrounding the spicy grilled fish, and made them his own. All that was left for him to do was to utilize the cooking method that had been planted into his mind to cook a delicious spicy grilled fish. Let's look at the ingredients first. Mag strode over to the fridge, and found that there was a new fish tank beside the shrimps, within which there were 7 large fish swimming and thriving. There was some disparity between the sizes of the fish. The smallest one was about 20 centimeters long, while the largest was about half a meter in length. The fish were a little like grass carp, with long streamlined bodies, except they had dense small scales that shimmered with a beautiful iridescent light, making them appear as if they were saltwater fish. System, what fish is this? Isn't grass carp or snakehead fish usually used for spicy grilled fish? Mag was quite curious as he inspected the fish. Those are iridescent scale grass carp. Grass carp are freshwater fish with many small fish bones, which makes it rather annoying to consume. Those small fish bones are thin bone spikes formed from the bone structures between muscle tissues, and they're most commonly found in low-grade bony fish. There are no highly evolved fish species that share this trait. As such, I crossbred Crocean croaker with grass carp, then selectively nurtured their offspring with favorable traits, finally producing the iridescent scale grass carp, which has the best traits all round. This type of fish has the texture of grass carp and the delicious taste of Crocean croaker. At the same time, it doesn't have the small annoying fish bones that grass carp have, and can live in the ocean. I cordoned off an area in the Staro Sea to breed them as free-range fish, and after several generations, I've created a fish farm of considerable scale that can satisfy your cooking needs. The system was very proud of what it had done. System, you intentionally made me draw the spicy grilled fish recipe, right? Mag's expression became more and more peculiar as he listened to the system's in-depth explanation. Nonsense! What kind of system do you take more for? The system refuted in a serious voice. If I didn't cook any grilled fish, then wouldn't all your efforts to breed the iridescent scale grass carp be in vain? Mag asked. The system was addicted to farming, and harbored an overzealous love for money. Both of those were traits that he couldn't understand. You don't need to worry about that. All you need to focus on is to quickly improve your power so you can advance toward the glorious goal of becoming the god of cookery, the system said in a serious voice. All right, just don't go bankrupt. Mag raised an eyebrow as he scanned through the new condiments on the cooking bench. Chili oil, ground pepper powder, wild pepper. Everything was prepared. In contrast with the common Sichuan-style grilled fish, the grilled fish recipe provided by the system included almost no other ingredients, and focused heavily on the fish. Mag approved of this type of cooking. The worst grilled fish dishes that he had eaten were all ones where the restaurants had overdone it with the condiments, thereby overwhelming the flavor of the fish, and ruining the dining experience. The dish was grilled fish, not grilled condiments. Simmer the old oil, kill the fish, and marinate, then grill, and braise, Mag murmured to himself as he pulled a large wok out from a cabinet. When cooking Wanzhou grilled fish, one of the most important and complex steps was to simmer the old oil. Even though the system had shortened this process from 6 hours to 1 hour, he still had to constantly stir the oil in the wok while simultaneously adjusting the flame temperature to produce a good batch of old oil. Aside from the large workload, and the boring nature of the task, it shouldn't be too difficult, right? Mag lit a fire before placing the large wok onto the cooking bench. He then poured the oil into the wok, and used a large ladle with a long handle to stir the oil in accordance with the method planted in his memory. Fail. No. You're so stupid. Mag failed 10 times just preparing the old oil alone. Why so strict? Mag couldn't help but grumble. He tipped out the oil in his wok as he adopted a serious expression, and curbed his lackadaisical attitude. He couldn't afford to waste so much time even before touching a fish. He still had to wake up early to run the restaurant the next day. Ding! Congratulations, you have simmered old oil to a satisfactory standard, the system notified. Mag looked at the bubbling oil in the large wok, and a smile appeared on his face. There really were no easy times when cooking. Only by completing each and every step with impeccable focus could he create the most delicious dishes. He picked up a landing net, but fell silent as he looked at the iridescent scale grass carp that were happily swimming in the fish tank. It wasn't because they were too adorable, and he simply couldn't bear to kill them. It was just that killing a fish was a really alien activity to him. Even though he had the best fish killing methods in his mind, he was still very uncomfortable when he thought about grabbing its slimy body, and then slicing open its stomach with his knife. I have to do this. If I can't even kill a fish, then I might as well give up on cooking the spicy grilled fish. Amy is still waiting to taste my dish. After staring at the fish tank for a long time, a determined expression slowly appeared in Mag's eyes. He picked the smallest grass carp, and grabbed its slimy and stick body, upon which he was immediately struck by the impulse to throw it away. However, before he could do so, the wild iridescent scale grass carp slipped out of his hand, and landed back in the fish tank, sending water splattering all over his face. Even you dare to pick on me? I'm going to kill you. Mag wiped the water from his face as a hint of rage welled up in his heart. He picked up that same iridescent scale grass carp again, and slapped it on the head with the flat side of his cleaver, upon which it was immediately knocked out. After killing the fish, he removed its internal organs before slicing grooves into its flesh, and applying the marinating condiments. The oven was a new appliance that had been added to the kitchen, and it made it easier for him grill fish in large batches. Also, he didn't have to frequently flip the grilled fish, so it wouldn't interfere with his preparation of other dishes. After grilling the fish to a half-cooked state in the oven, he pulled it out, and applied a layer of old oil onto its body. It was then grilled to about 90% done, upon which a second layer of old oil was applied, along with some cumin powder. After grilling for a short while longer, the fish was placed on a stainless steel dish over a bed of chopped onion. After that, the sauce, ginger, garlic, bean paste. All of the ingredients and condiments were placed into the wok in a set order. Thus, a fiery red sauce was produced. It was poured over the grilled fish, and allowed to sit so its flesh could absorb the sauce. In another wok, the wild peppers and dried chili were fried together, sending a delicious spicy scent wafting through the air. That, too, was poured over the grilled fish, along with a pinch of chopped green onions, and the red and green presented a bright contrast. After finishing the dish, even Mag couldn't help but swallow his drool. The familiar scent was already superior to all of the spicy grilled fish dishes he had sampled in the past. Not up to standard. The system's cold voice sounded. Mag had just picked up a pair of chopsticks, preparing to have a taste, and his hand faltered upon hearing that. He knew that there was no way he would succeed on his first try, but after receiving that blow from the system, he suddenly lost the urge to taste the dish. "All right, then I'll keep trying." Mag put down his chopsticks, and strode over to the fish tanks. He repeated those monotonous tasks over and over again, improving throughout the process. One grilled fish dish after another was produced, only to be rejected by the system over and over again. However, Mag didn't utter as much as a single word of complaint. Instead, he became more and more painstaking and diligent, trying to perfect every single step. "How about this time, system?" Mag poured the fried wild pepper and dried chili over the grilled fish, creating a sizzling sound. Chopped green onions were sprinkled on top, and a delicious scent wafted through the air. The time on the wall told Mag that 52 days had already passed. He had lost count of how many grilled fish dishes he had prepared long ago. All he knew was that in the beginning, even catching and killing the smallest iridescent scale grass carp was a slight struggle for him, but now, he could pull out the biggest iridescent scale grass carp in the tank, then stun, kill, and clean it within 15 seconds. Mag felt like even the fish salesmen at the market probably weren't as fast as him. As Mag awaited the final judgment from the system, he was very calm. He had been rejected countless times already, and if rejection came again, then he would just have to keep going. He could only blame himself for being too picky in his past life, stating all of those meticulous conditions, and shooting himself in the foot. The grilled fish he had sampled were all widely accepted to be the best on offer, but he still made additional demands. Those demands were now coming back to haunt him. "If I'm going to make it, then I'm going to make it as perfect as possible. Otherwise, I would be bringing shame to the restaurant," Mag thought to himself, and a smile appeared on his face. Even though cooking in the test field for the god of cookery was extremely boring and monotonous, it was all worth it when he saw the elated smiles on the faces of Amy and his customers after they tasted his dishes. According to the criteria proposed by you in the past, 1. The fish skin must be crispy, yet not burned. The flesh of the fish must be as soft as tofu, but can't fall apart. Tick. 2. The soup must be oily but not greasy, and has to be spicy, yet it can't sting the nose with its scent. Tick. 3. The taste of the fish must be alluring and pronounced, but not overpowered by other ingredients or condiments. Tick. You have satisfied all 3 conditions. Congratulations, you have mastered the spicy grilled fish. At the same time, you have unlocked the right to purchase all ingredients related to the spicy grilled fish, as well as the right to use all of the kitchenware required to cook the dish. The system's voice carried a hint of encouragement. Looks like I'm pretty talented at cooking grilled fish. A smile appeared on Mag's face. He looked at the spicy grilled fish that was simmering in oily red soup, and couldn't help but swallow. All that was left to do was to place it over an alcohol stove, and the delicious spicy grilled fish dish would be ready to be served. Would you like to taste the grilled fish? If not, you may leave the test field for the god of cookery now, the system asked. Mag shook his head with a smile, and said, I'll pass this time. I'll taste it together with Amy next time. But, system, can I stay here for a while? There's still a few hours left until morning, so just get my sword in here, and let me practice in the test field for the god of cookery. He had hatched this plot a long time ago. He could only practice an hour per night as he had to take into consideration his stamina, recovery ability, as well as a series of other limiting factors. However, none of those were concerns in the test field for the god of cookery. He could practice day and night, without having to worry about not getting enough. As such, he could practice for several dozen days without any sleep, thereby allowing him to perfectly master the most powerful sword forms that he could unleash in his current condition. Thus, the test field for the god of cookery would have a second name, the Sword God Test Field. The test field for the god of cookery was made so that you can master cooking methods as quickly as possible. It won't be very appropriate if you do something other than cooking here. The system was a little conflicted. How is it inappropriate? I'm only here to practice my swordsmanship. It's not like there's anyone else here. You gave me 365 days, and I managed to complete the mission in advance through my hard work. As such, it's very appropriate that the rest of that time is free for me to use as I please, right? Mag asked in a serious voice. But manifesting your long sword here will expend additional power. If you want to practice here, the space will have to expand as well, so, the system's voice trailed off halfway, but the meaning it was trying to convey was already quite clear. Mag pursed his lips, and said, So how much money do you want? How did you know what I was going to say? The system was quite surprised. Hehe, am I supposed to act like an idiot and ask system, are there some restrictions? That would make me look retarded. Mag rolled his eyes. Everyone knew what the system wanted. The system fell silent for a while as if it were carefully mulling things over, and replied, I'll collect 10 gold coins per session. I'm fine with that price, but I'll need a room that's about 10 square meters big. Mag nodded. That price was a little cheaper than he had anticipated. When traveling, some people chose to save money by taking the bus, which was cheaper but more time-consuming, while others chose to fly on planes in order to save time at the expense of a greater monetary cost. Poor people spent time to save money, while rich people spent money to save time. That was a commonplace phenomenon. Spending 10 gold coins would allow him to practice without sleeping for several dozens of days. Mag felt like that was a good deal. He was close to being a tycoon now, so he could afford to purchase time with money. Deal, the system replied quickly. A white light flashed from the kitchen around Mag, upon which everything disappeared. A sealed-off room about 10 square meters in size took its place, and a long sword appeared in Mag's hand. It was his sword. All right, then I'll reach perfect mastery in all of the sword forms that I can use before getting out of here. This is quite a good way to improve. Mag held the long sword in his hand, and felt that its weight, balance, and appearance were identical to his long sword in the real world. Within the sealed room, he practiced his sword forms over and over again as if he were an inexhaustible automaton. At the main branch of the Aden Square Catering Association, within the largest conference chamber, the most important figures in the association gathered together, all of them with grave expressions on their faces. Robert sat in the middle, and also wore a dark expression. A piece of paper had already been crumpled into a ball in his hand without his even realizing it. All right, then it's decided. This restaurant's actions have already completely disrupted the order of the ongoing Aden Square food competition, resulting in complaints from many other restaurants. Today is already the 8th day, and in 2 days, the final rankings will be decided. We can't allow our Aiden Square food competition to lose credibility in the hearts of the customers. The fatso sitting at the head of the table appeared as if he were at least 150 kilograms, and he adopted a serious expression as he said, "Thus, we'll be removing that restaurant from the rankings board tomorrow morning. After that, we'll investigate the abnormal rankings he had managed to secure, then announce the results of our investigation as well as the punishment delivered." What the president is saying is that we can't allow one bad apple to spoil the entire bunch. This restaurant has completely disregarded the rules, so it has to be permanently removed from the rankings board. Exactly. How can a restaurant that has been open for less than a month attempt to break into the top 20? If they're to succeed, our catering association's reputation would be swept to the ground. Everyone present immediately expressed their approval for that decision. A faint smile appeared on Warren's face. He had just received 100 dragon coins, all to take care of such a small restaurant. Young Master Cyril sure was generous. However, seeing as he had already taken the money, he naturally had to do his bidding so that Cyril would still be willing to pay him next time. Right at that moment, Robert turned to Warren with a serious expression, and said, "President, I visited that restaurant on the first day the rankings were released, and conducted an investigation. There were no issues with customer satisfaction, service, food, and prices. So I don't think we should remove Mamie Restaurant from the rankings board." Warren's smile immediately froze on his face upon hearing that. The entire conference chamber also fell silent, and peculiar expressions appeared on everyone's faces. Robert was a little special in that he had been sent from the city lord's castle, so his position was slightly different from that of the other vice presidents. However, his personality was too unyielding and straightforward, so President Warren did not like him. As such, he was figuratively marooned, so his position in the catering association was a little awkward. There was another fatso by the name of Tonus sitting beside Warren. He looked at Robert with a hint of mockery on his face as he said, "Vice President Robert, I know you like to conduct your own investigations at various restaurants, but I don't agree with what you're saying. This restaurant has only been open for a month, so even if we were to set aside how they managed to garner such a large customer base, I had a look at prices of their dishes, and even the cheapest one costs 200 copper coins, while the most expensive one costs 800. Even high-class restaurants wouldn't dare to charge such high prices. How could it be reasonable for a small restaurant like them to charge these prices?" As Warren's right-hand man, as well as a vice president of the association, he was also quite disdainful toward Robert. "That's right. With such high prices and essentially zero promotion, how could they've gathered such a large customer base in such a short time?" Theo also chimed in. All of those vice presidents had been developed by President Warren, and had been living good life under his reign. They also received considerable bonuses from time to time, and they were thoroughly enjoying their role. However, the stubborn Robert was a constant thorn in their side, so everyone was forced to refrain slightly from engaging in shady dealings. Thus, he was a public enemy in the first place, so everyone immediately sided with Warren against him. Robert had come from the city lord's castle, but the catering association wasn't an official organization anyway. For him to be sent to the catering association most likely indicated that he was failing in his job at the city lord's castle, so he wasn't an important figure in their eyes. Robert adopted a calm expression, and responded, "That restaurant was able to accumulate such a large customer base in less than a month as their food is extremely delicious. I feel like their prices are justified as I tasted their most expensive menu item, the braised chicken and rice, as well as their most controversial dish, the tofu pudding. Those 2 dishes were more delicious than anything I had ever had, and I felt that they were well worth the price." During the past few days, Mamie Restaurant's dishes climbed steadily up the rankings. The braised chicken and rice was already at number 21, and after tallying up today's votes, it should be able to break into the top 20 with no issues. Robert had predicted that Mamie Restaurant's meteoric rise would irk those in the catering association, but he didn't think that these guys would make a snap judgment without any evidence and remove Mamie Restaurant from the rankings. Robert was fuming internally at their unjust actions, but could only repress his rage. In this place, he was a lone warrior with no support. Mamie Restaurant was an exceptional restaurant. Such an establishment deserved to be respected and promoted. It should be developed into a main attraction of the Aden Square, not removed from the rankings board just because it was interfering with some people's profits. I do approve of and endorse Vice President Roberts' endeavors to conduct personal investigations at restaurants, but your words are very subjective, and are not enough to convince me. I only trust evidence, and believe in statistics and facts. Warren's small eyes narrowed further into slits, and he shook his head at Robert as he said, "From what I can currently see, there is an issue with this restaurant. I don't know why Vice President Robert insists on standing up for it. President Warren, I believe this is a restaurant with a lot of potential, and in the near future, it could become the most famous restaurant in the Aden Square. I am saying all this based on the delicious food that I had there, not to stand up for them. It's ironic that President Warren is talking about facts and evidence when the decision you arrived at was made based on nothing but personal subjective judgment. You accuse me of standing up for Mamie Restaurant, but what you're doing is standing up for restaurants who harbor resentment for Mamie Restaurant. If you insist on removing the restaurant from the rankings board, then I will be reporting this matter to the city lord for him to make a decision." Robert rose to his feet and glowered at Warren. The conference chamber fell into silence again. Tonus and Theo also both shut their mouths. Robert had brought up the city lord, so it would be unwise for them to interject any further. There's no need for you to report this matter to the city lord, I will do so on my own. If our catering association is not good enough for an important figure like you, then I suggest the city lord transfers you elsewhere." Warren chuckled coldly, and his expression was also extremely cold. "Without instruction from the city lord himself, I won't leave the catering association. President Warren, I hope you still remember the promises and guarantees you had made back when you took over from the former president." Robert turned, and stormed out of the room. Warren looked at Robert's departing figure, and a memory was suddenly evoked in his mind. He recalled all the way back, when an elderly man with white hair had held tightly onto his hands in front of a few dilapidated tables, and vehemently described his vision for the future of the catering association. He then passed a set of keys to Warren in an extremely careful manner, making him the owner of the place. On that day, he had said many things, and also promised many things. Tonus disrupted his train of thought, and asked, "President, what should we do?" "We'll naturally be following the normal procedure. Tonus, come with me to the Mamie Restaurant tomorrow. We must take an evidence-based approach, so we'll go and collect some evidence." Warren smiled as he got up to leave. "All right." Tonus hurriedly nodded. Everyone departed, and Warren entered another room with a balding middle-aged fatso. "Stanley, go and tell young Master Cyril that Mamie Restaurant won't be on the rankings board tomorrow. On top of that, it will never make it onto the rankings board again." Warren picked up a crystal glass, and poured some wine for himself. He swirled the vibrant red wine before bringing the glass to his lips and taking a sip. "Yes, President." Stanley hurriedly nodded before quickly departing. Warren took another sip of wine, and looked at the swirling wine in the glass as he murmured to himself, "It's just a small restaurant. As long as you're in the Aden Square, I can decide your fate. Nothing is more important to a restaurant than their reputation." In Cyril's mansion, Cyril raised his glass to Stanley with a smile on his face, and proposed a toast. "Well done. Thank you for your efforts, Board Member Stanley and President Warren. I believe that under the protection of the Catering Association, the Aden Square food competition will continue to thrive. Here's to us, cheers. To us." Stanley hurriedly raised his glass with a fawning smile. He had benefited greatly from the deal that had just taken place, and was actually hoping for more restaurants like Mamie Restaurant to appear so he could continue to take more bribes. We should be able to break into the top 20 on the rankings board today, right? The next morning, Mag opened his eyes, and got out of bed. He looked at his two hands, and a smile appeared on his face. Mag didn't look any different from before, but only he was aware of the transformation his body had undertaken. After practicing for 70 sleepless days in the test field for the god of cookery, he had already mastered all of the sword forms that he was capable of using, and completely perfected them. Those sword forms were deeply ingrained in his memory in the first place, so his body held a certain degree of muscle memory. All he did was to awaken that muscle memory, and achieve true mastery. Now, he had done it. Mag clenched his fist, and repressed the urge to grab his sword, and examine the fruits of his labor. If he were to encounter that third-tier bronze wild boar again, even if he couldn't defeat it outright, he was confident that he would be able to evade its attacks with ease, and be better equipped to harm it. He looked at his bedside alarm clock, which told him that it was 5 a.m. on the dot. Amy and Ugly Duckling were still sleeping, and she wore a sweet smile on her little face as if she were having a good dream. Spicy grilled fish is a little too oily for breakfast. I'll wait until noon to cook it. After that, I'll release the dish at night. A smile also appeared on Mag's face at the sight of Amy's adorable little face. He was looking forward to her reaction when she ate the fish. It would be very interesting to see. After brushing his teeth and washing his face, Mag made his way into the kitchen. There was a new large oven in the corner, within which 8 fish could be grilled at the same time. The tank for the shrimp had been divided into 2, and one of the sections housed iridescent scale grass carp, which were swimming around joyfully. Looks like the system hasn't enforced some sort of ingredient gathering mission. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know where to find carp that's being bred in the sea. Mag then checked through the condiments to ascertain that all of the required spicy grilled fish condiments were there, upon which he heaved a sigh of relief. After 2 days, the food competition mission will also be complete. Amy would really like Haagen-Dazs ice cream, right? Icy and sweet foods are usually irresistible to children, Mag thought to himself as he massaged a ball of dough. After increasing the supply of braised chicken and rice, it enjoyed a steady climb up the rankings board. On the day prior, it had already reached 21, while Reggiamo also re-entered the top 30, settling at number 29. As such, Mag wasn't concerned in the slightest about the food competition mission. Furthermore, his next rest day coincided with the final day that the rankings were released, so it wouldn't negatively affect his rankings. I bet Mamie Restaurant will break into the top 20 today. Of course it will. Even though that's already a great ranking, I feel like Mamie Restaurant's 5 dishes should dominate the top 5. I'm so angry about the savory tofu pudding. After Mag discouraged us from giving one another 5-star ratings, it's been stuck at 66 to 67 for ages. It's all Mag's fault for supplying so little every day. One portion isn't anywhere near enough. There were already many people gathered in front of the magic screens, waiting for the rankings boards to be broadcast. Quite a few of them were Mamie Restaurant customers, and they grouped together to chat. Checking out the rankings before going to Mamie Restaurant for breakfast had already become a ritual of sorts for many of them. Hehe, you won't see him on the rankings board today. My rotisserie can finally return to the 29th spot. Ricky stood off to the side with a sinister smile on his face. He had already received insider information that Mamie Restaurant would be removed from the rankings, and everything would fall into place as it should. The ranking boards were updated at 7 a.m. sharp, and as the red text appeared, everyone began to scour the screens with their eyes. Even after 8 days, the rankings hadn't really changed all that much, so most of the restaurant owners weren't expecting anything spectacular. Ricky's rotisserie is number 29. Ricky yelled with excitement. Even though he had already received news beforehand, he was still unable to repress his joy when the ranking was truly disclosed. Our restaurant advanced 5 ranks. My restaurant also went up 4 ranks. Could it be because business was really good yesterday? Our restaurant made it into the top 100. Yes. We'll definitely get bonuses this month. Many restaurant owners' eyes lit up. In particular, those who were just outside the top 100 shot up 5 places, and squeezed their way into the top 100, making them feel as if they had won the lottery. Why can't I see the braised chicken and rice? It's not even in the top 30. Not just the braised chicken and rice, the Rigiamo, tofu puddings, and Yangzhou fried rice have all disappeared from the rankings board. How could this be? All 5 dishes were still on the rankings board yesterday. Have they been removed? It looks like they really have been removed. How could they do that? It's already really infuriating that such delicious dishes haven't dominated the top 5, now, they've disappeared from the rankings board altogether. All of the Mamie restaurant customers erupted into an enraged frenzy. They had invested a lot of time and emotions into the 5 Mamie restaurant dishes, and they found it simply unacceptable that the 5 dishes had been removed from the rankings. Oi, what's wrong with your rankings board? Where did Mamie restaurant go? The braised chicken and rice was still at number 21 yesterday. Even if you are going to remove it from the rankings board, your catering association should provide an explanation. You pride yourselves on fairness, but you've just removed the best restaurant in the entire Aden Square from your rankings board for no reason. Have you no shame? The catering association employees were immediately surrounded by furious customers, who were interrogating them with a vengeance. There were even people from the Grey Temple and City Lord's Castle among them, and the catering association workers were sweating profusely as they tried to answer the barbed questions aimed at them. How is this restaurant so powerful? That was the first question that appeared in their minds. During the past few days, they were actually quite excited to see Mamie restaurant gallop up the rankings board as a black horse. Whenever they heard customers insult the Aden Square food competition for being fixed, they would feel quite ashamed. As employees of the catering association, they had naturally all heard about the shady dealings that were going on. However, even Vice President Robert couldn't do anything, so what could they do about it? I'm sorry for your distress, a detailed report will be delivered soon. Thank you for your understanding. The employees could only put on professional smiles and repeat that same sentence over and over again, but in their hearts, they were also quite disgruntled by the removal of Mamie restaurant from the rankings. Rude looked at all of the infuriated customers, and he turned to Arvin as he said, I've worked at the Catering Association for over 2 decades, and I've never seen any customers that are so loyal and fervent toward a restaurant. To think that even such a restaurant was removed from the rankings board, it looks like the Aden Square food competition is going to lose all credibility soon. Arvin nodded, and replied, Indeed, the savory tofu pudding is so delicious. Amy pushed her little bike out from behind the counter, and turned to Mag with an expectant look as she asked, Father, will I really be able to eat the rainbow fish when I come back at noon? Of course. When have I ever lied to you? Mag nodded with a smile. He pushed open the door with one hand while guiding the bike out the door with his other hand. Mag, your restaurant has exploded. Mag was immediately greeted by a frantic voice when he walked out the door. Mag turned toward the forge with a wary expression, and heaved a sigh of relief upon discovering that it had not been reduced to a pile of rubble. He then turned to face an animated Harrison with a perplexed look. Harrison could see the puzzlement on Mag's face, and he hurriedly explained, Mag, your restaurant was removed from the rankings board. All 5 dishes were removed with no exceptions. Removed from the rankings. Mag raised an eyebrow upon hearing that. That really was quite unexpected. Ever since the sweet and savory factions had stopped giving one another 5-star ratings, Mag felt like the mission was in the bag. However, it appeared that things weren't going to be that simple. Uncle Grey Fatty, are you saying that someone has kicked our restaurant off the rankings board? Amy emerged from behind Mag with displeasure etched on her little face. Yes, Mamie restaurant must have been targeted by someone, which is why it was removed from the rankings board. Harrison nodded with a furious expression. During the past few days, he checked the rankings board every single day, paying more attention to it than his own gold shop. Now that the dishes were abruptly removed from the rankings, he was struck by a feeling akin to that of having his own child go missing, and he was very displeased. All of the customers lining up in front of the restaurant also began to discuss heatedly among themselves. They were also very angry that Mamie Restaurant had been removed from the rankings. "Mag, have you provoked some sort of vile character?" Trajay was also a businessman himself, and his businessman's intuition told him that there were some hidden circumstances involved. "Now that you mention it, I might have. Perhaps I irked all of the restaurants below me on the rankings." Mag shook his head with a smile. He wasn't feeling all that panicked or enraged. It was indeed outside of his expectations that his restaurant had been removed from the rankings board. It appeared that the catering association of this world was even more corrupt and shameless than he had thought. It was already the 9th day, but his restaurant had been banished for no reason. The mission had been in the bag for him, but it wasn't very clear now. However, if there weren't a few ups and downs, then it made running a business quite bland and monotonous. Mag wasn't all that bothered about all this. After all, his father had established a massive corporation in his past life, and it had also suffered its fair share of hardships. In fact, he was close to bankruptcy on several occasions, and if he had lacked mental fortitude, then he most likely would have already thrown himself off a building. Having said that, though, the Catering Association's actions were really quite despicable. He had spent tens of thousands of copper coins buying tickets during the past few days, but it had all gone to waste. They were trying to screw him over, but he certainly wasn't the type to suffer in silence. If they wanted a battle, then it was a battle that they were going to have. Mamie Restaurant was no longer as frail as it once had been. "All right, thank you for informing me of this, and thanks to everyone for your concern. Even if they do release a so-called report, I can't accept such unfair treatment. However, Amy's lessons start soon, so I have to take her to class first. Oh, by the way, I'm releasing a new dish tonight." Mag glanced down at his watch before hoisting Amy onto the bike with a smile. He then rode the bike toward Chaos School. "Mag sure has a good personality. Even after suffering such unjust treatment, he can still smile and talk to us in such an amicable manner. Maybe Mag doesn't really even care about the rankings board. After all, business is booming for him every day anyway. He's constantly having to shoo away customers after the closing time, so he doesn't even need good rankings to attract customers." "I don't think that's the case. Mag has bought a lot of tickets, and that's quite a large investment, which shows that he still cares about the food competition. However, now that he's been removed from the rankings board, it's going to be hard to get onto it again. Even though Amy has 2 10th-tier magic casters as her teachers, it's still going to be hard for them to influence the Catering Association's decision. Those guys are saying that they're going to release an official report soon, but I don't think we should even bother with them. Isn't the Catering Association a subsidiary to the City Lord's Castle? If you ask me, Mag should just go straight to the City Lord's Castle, and expose the Catering Association's shady dealings." Setting that aside for now, did I just hear what Mag said correctly? He said he was going to release a new dish tonight, right? We have to come and taste that. He did indeed. I wonder what the new dish will be. The customers all discussed spiritedly among one another as they looked at Mag's departing figure. The sweet and savory factions were suddenly extremely harmonious and unified. "What's going on?" Urian made his way over slowly to everyone. He had heard bits and pieces of everyone's conversations, and from what he had heard, it appeared that Mamie Restaurant was in some trouble. "Master Urian, Mamie Restaurant was removed from the Aiden Square Food Competition Rankings Board." One of them immediately explained the situation, and all of the other customers chimed in with displeasure, hoping that Urian would be able to uphold justice for Mamie Restaurant. How could they do that? All of Mamie Restaurant's dishes are so delicious, they should be dominating the top 5. Lulu and I have gone to all the restaurants on the rankings boards, and barely any of them were any good. Zixi grumbled before prodding Lulu so he could back her up. Isn't that right, Lulu? Yes, you're right. Lulu nodded, and patted Zixi's head in a comforting gesture. I feel like it's better to have less people here anyway. It's more peaceful that way. Urian contemplated everyone's complaints, musing in his husky voice with a calm expression on his face. Everyone looked at Urian's departing figure, then at one another, and they didn't know what to say anymore. However, when they thought about it, it was indeed too much to ask Urian to stand up for a restaurant. After all, he was the renowned Lord of Ice and a 10th-tier magic caster. After a brief silence, Urian turned to look at everyone, and in a bone-chilling, frosty voice, he said, "By the way, wouldn't this issue be resolved if we killed everyone from the Catering Association?" Gulp. Everyone was petrified upon hearing that. The thought process of an insanely powerful being was indeed very unique. If they simply killed everyone from the Catering Association, the Aiden Square food competition would cease to exist. How boring! Urian turned away, and left. As soon as Amy arrived in the magic classroom, she looked at Krasu with a pitiable expression, and wheedled, "Master Krasu, our restaurant was removed from the Aiden Square food competition rankings. I'm so angry. Can you make them put us back on the rankings board?" Krasu glowered with a serious expression, and thundered, Is someone causing trouble for the restaurant again? How dare they pick on my disciple? Looks like they want to taste my fireball. Tell me who it is, I'll burn them all to death." It's not that big of a deal. It's just that our restaurant was participating in the Aiden Square food competition, but it was suddenly removed from the rankings today. Mag was given a massive fright by Krasu's vehement reaction, and he hurriedly explained the situation. If Krasu really went ahead and burned everyone in the Catering Association to death, he would have to flee the city with Amy. Couldn't they be more diplomatic in their thinking? I see. When I get some spare time, I'll go and put in a word for you with Michael. He should be able to help you. Krasu nodded before turning to Amy with a smile, and continuing, "Little Amy, the materials are already being transported from Rodu, and they should arrive at Chaos City soon. When they arrive, I'm going to personally build a magic fortress for you. However, those old guys heard that I took a disciple, and they sent 3 disciples of their disciples to congratulate me. They're definitely up to no good, so I'm going to teach you some really good spells in the next few days so you can teach them a lesson. Looks like I'll have to take care of my problems on my own." After exiting the school, Mag rode his bike toward Sherlock Detective Agency. To important figures like Krasu, the restaurant rankings were completely trivial. It couldn't even compare to the importance of teaching Amy magic spells. One must know oneself and one's enemies in order to emerge victorious in battle. I have to do some research about the Catering Association, then pay a visit to the City Lord's castle. After emerging from the Sherlock Detective Agency, he placed a yellow document bag into his bike's basket, then rode it back to the restaurant. After Mag walked into the restaurant, Yabimiya approached him with a concerned expression, and asked, "Boss, what do we do now? Our restaurant has been removed from the rankings, do we still keep casting votes? We have enough tickets for the next 2 days." Sally was also quite incensed, but she was a lot calmer than Yabimiya. Mag parked the bike, and turned to the 2 of them with a smile as he said, "Keep voting, maybe we still have a chance at making a comeback. Just ignore the issue for now. Don't let your negative emotions affect your customer service." "Boss, are you really all right?" Yabimiya was still a little concerned for Mag. Even she was this angry, so Mag must have been fuming, but he was still speaking to them with a smile. Sally was also a little surprised as she looked at Mag. "Of course I'm fine. The final rankings haven't been decided yet, right?" Mag shook his head with a smile as he tossed the documents in the basket on his bike into a drawer. He then turned to the 2 of them, and asked, what do you want for breakfast? I'll cook something up for you. I'll be releasing a new dish tonight, and we'll taste test it at noon. A new dish. Yabimiya's eyes immediately lit up upon hearing that, and her sour mood was alleviated significantly. She contemplated momentarily before replying, I want a sweet tofu pudding and a rujiamo. What's the new dish this time? I want a Yangzhou fried rice, Sally chimed in. She was also looking at Mag with a curious expression. The braised chicken and rice had only been released not long ago, so she was surprised that Mag was releasing another new dish so soon. You'll find out at noon. Have a seat and take a rest. I'll go cook up some breakfast. Mag refrained from revealing the answer. Instead, he gave the two of them a mysterious smile before turning toward the kitchen. I wonder what delicious dish it'll be. Yabimiya was filled with anticipation. Unflappable even in the face of adversity. That must be why he's constantly able to improve and cook more delicious dishes, Sally thought to herself. If it were Mag's delicious cooking that had prompted her to stay in the first place, then it was the charisma of his benevolent and calm personality that was slowly winning her heart. Why would a man like him come to Chaos City with his daughter to open a restaurant, and who could be Amy's elven mother? Why did Mag never mention her, and why had they never seen her? Sally had countless questions in her mind, but she didn't dare to ask any of them. After Sally and Yabimiya finished their breakfast, it was time for opening, so Mamie Restaurant opened the restaurant door with a smile, and let in all of the customers. Yabimiya wore her usual bubbly smile, while Sally wore her perpetual cold expression that was still graceful yet not haughty in any way. The customers were in a foul mood as Mamie Restaurant had been removed from the rankings, and they had thought that the atmosphere in the restaurant would be quite gloomy as well. The restaurant bosses were always the most frustrated when things of this nature happened. However, their negative emotions were immediately wiped away by the Mag and Yabimiya's smiles. It was still the same bright and happy restaurant, and even the conflict between the sweet and sour factions had become a daily ritual that the customers had come to enjoy. Welcome! I hope everyone can have a pleasant morning today, Mag greeted with a smile. He then turned and nodded to Yabimiya and Sally before making his way toward the kitchen. The customers were the foundation of a restaurant. He could fail the mission, but he didn't want to negatively impact the moods of his customers because of that. That was not something that a good restaurant would do. The busy breakfast service drew to a conclusion. Mag took off his apron before going upstairs with the documents that he had obtained from the detective agency. There was still some time before he had to prepare his spicy grilled fish, so he decided to learn a bit about the Catering Association first. There weren't that many documents with information regarding the Catering Association, so Mag read through them in about 20 minutes. Simply put, they were a private association that was enlisted by the authorities, thereby making it an official organization, but it was still run as a private entity, and wasn't supervised by the authorities. About 4 decades ago, a middle-aged man began to gather information on all of the restaurants in the Aden Square, and then conducted a survey to determine the most popular restaurants. Based on the results of that survey, he made a restaurant ranking. That man was the founder of the Catering Association, Laurie. The restaurant ranking that he'd created was gradually endorsed by more and more customers as it made finding good food very convenient. At the same time, avid foodies began to join him, and they founded the Food Association together. After over 2 decades of development, the Food Association was well established, and its food competition became more and more renowned. It had become the go-to directory for people looking for good food in the Aden Square. All of the restaurants that appeared on its rankings board were generally endorsed by all customers. After that, Laurie retired, and passed on his food association to a young man named Warren. That Warren truly was a genius. Not long after taking over, he revolutionized the food competition's rating method. In the past, members of the association would dine at each restaurant to determine their rankings. However, he transformed that into a customer vote. The Food Association entered a period of rapid development, and the food competition became even more heavily endorsed. Under the new voting system, subjectivity was minimized, so the dishes that made it onto the rankings received widespread love from all customers. As such, it became an extremely influential force, and a restaurant's ranking in the food competition could decide how much business they were getting. After that, the Food Association was endorsed by the City Lord's Castle, and changed its name to the Catering Association. It received an official seal, and that was when profits began to spike for the association. If he hasn't been reduced to a deceitful man who takes bribes and manipulates rankings, he really would be a genius. Mag put down the documents in his hands. His voice was tinged with a hint of wistfulness. This food competition is lucky to have not encountered me during its inception. Otherwise, I'd dominate all rankings from 1 to 100, and it would serve as a personal for me. Mag pursed his lips. There were a few pages of documents at the end that detailed the cooperation of the Catering Association with the Chamber of Commerce. That wasn't really a secret. The Chamber of Commerce had gathered all of the top shops in the Aden Square, which included all of the best restaurants, and even based on their food alone, most of them could actually break into the top 100 anyway. However, in recent years, the top 30, and even top 50, had essentially been dominated by restaurants that were subsidiaries to the Chamber of Commerce, making it almost impossible for other restaurants to break into the rankings board. That type of abnormal phenomenon had never taken place in the past, and it drew complaints from many businesses. In the face of those complaints, the Catering Association's response was always the customer's choice is paramount. As for how heavily manipulated the customers' voting results were, that was something that only the Catering Association knew. The documents detailed how the Chamber of Commerce released a mission every month, and that mission was a voting mission. All of its subsidiary businesses had to vote for the Chamber of Commerce's subsidiary restaurants to complete the mission, thereby ensuring those restaurants secured high rankings. It's the Chamber of Commerce again. The two guys that were arrested before were Chamber of Commerce board members as well. Looks like the Chamber of Commerce must be behind the removal of the restaurant from the rankings. Could it be that such a colossus is already onto the restaurant? Mag's brows furrowed slightly. Even though he had announced to Gudania that he was going to make the Chamber of Commerce close down, he was well aware of how terrifyingly powerful such a colossus was. They presided over about 20% of Chaos City's economy, and their wealth and influence were unimaginable to the average person. I don't think they're onto me yet. It seems like the restaurant's rankings must have interfered with some other restaurant's profits, which is why they decided to remove the restaurant from the rankings. If I want to re-enter the rankings board, I'll have to get past the Chamber of Commerce, and make the Catering Association willing to reinstate me on the rankings board. This really is quite a difficult issue to resolve without killing anyone. Mag contemplated the predicament for a while, but was still unable to find a good way to rectify the issue. With his current status and power, he didn't even have the right to converse with the higher UPS of the Catering Association, let alone the Chamber of Commerce. As for Urian and Krasu, they were powerful enough to make everyone wary of them, but if the president of the Chamber of Commerce didn't want to see them, then he could simply refuse to see them. The City Lord's Castle and Grey Temple would ensure his safety, as Chaos City was a city with laws and rules. Powerful beings could earn respect from everyone, live better lives, and secure greater status for themselves, but that didn't mean that they could do whatever they wanted. Mag was glad that he had been reborn in a world where law and order existed. Those laws also ensured his safety, and even though he was weak and insignificant, he could still live with dignity in the face of those powerful beings. He couldn't do whatever he wanted in a world like this, but at the very least, it elevated his quality of life significantly. He didn't have to be wary of the demons on the streets or constantly be on his guard for sneak attacks. Law and order restricted powerful beings, and empowered weaklings. As a weakling for now, Mag had managed to earn respect and approval from his customers with his delicious food, not just because Amy had Krasu and Urian as her teachers. He enjoyed that feeling. In the City Lord's Castle, Robert stood in the waiting room, and said to the worker there, "Please report to the city lord that Robert of the Catering Association wishes to request an audience with him." The worker was a little surprised as he looked up at Robert, and he said respectfully, "Oh, it's Master Robert. The city lord has just left not long ago, and won't be back until noon. Would you like to wait for him here or come back in the afternoon?" Robert had been at the city lord's castle for over 10 years, and had steadily climbed up the ranks. The city lord was quite fond of him, and, barring any mishaps, he would be in a very high position in a few years. However, to everyone's surprise, he proposed that he wanted to join the Catering Association. Everyone initially thought that he was there to earn some quick money, as the Catering Association was renowned for high wages and bonuses. However, word soon spread of him being ostracized in the Catering Association, even to the extent that he was reduced to a lone warrior. Everyone was very confused by that. They then thought that the city lord had sent him there with the intention of putting him through some hardships so he could emerge a better man from the other side, upon which the city lord would entrust him with a more important role. "Thank you, I'll wait." A hint of disappointment flashed through Robert's eyes as he nodded. "All right, then you can come with me and wait inside. I'm sure there will be many acquaintances of yours that would love to catch up with you." The worker smiled. "No, thanks. I'll just wait here. It's current working hours, and catching up with me would distract them from their duties." Robert shook his head, and took a seat near a window in the waiting room. He then stared out the window with a grave expression, and fell completely silent. "He really is as reclusive as they say." The worker poured some tea for Robert, and didn't say anything else, either. When noon arrived, the worker quickly strode over to Robert, and said, "Master Robert, the city lord has returned, and wishes to see you." "Thank you." Robert stood up, and quickly left with the worker. The cup of tea that had been placed next to him remained completely untouched. "Robert, I heard you waited for me for an entire morning. Is there something urgent you need to talk to me about?" A well-built man with free-flowing red hair strode toward Robert. He had a black saber hanging from his waist and a section missing from his left pinky. Smiling, he said, "Actually, don't tell me yet. You haven't eaten yet, right? Come and have a meal with me. We'll talk as we eat." "Yes." Robert bowed his head slightly, and trailed along behind the city lord. He was still the same pleasant and straightforward man that he had always been, and he didn't have any of the arrogance or haughtiness that one might expect from a city lord. Michael had picked up his bowl, and was preparing to dig in when Robert sat down next to him, and said, "City lord, I wanted to report to you about my work at the Catering Association. At the same time, I know why you're here today. Before I left in the morning, Warren came, and reported many things to me. He also advised me to transfer you out of the Catering Association." Michael put down the bowl in his hand, and he suddenly chuckled at the sight of Robert's awkward expression. He then picked up his bowl again, and shoveled some rice into his mouth as he said, "I want to hear your side of the story. I've worked with you far longer than I have with Warren, so I naturally trust you more." Robert heaved a sigh of relief, and said, "On the Catering Association's Aden Square food competition, there was a new restaurant by the name of Mamie Restaurant. Mamie Restaurant? Why does that sound so familiar?" Outside the room, there was a young girl with a ponytail. She had her ears pressed tightly against the window, and was carefully listening to the conversation taking place within the room. "Is the food from that restaurant really that good? It's hard to believe, but Uncle Robert is renowned for his honesty," Vivian thought to herself as she eavesdropped on the conversation. She had heard from the servants that her father was back, so she came to have a lunch with him. Upon hearing a conversation taking place in the room, she decided to eavesdrop for a bit. She loved doing these types of things, and it didn't matter if she got caught anyway. "Mamie Restaurant? Mamie? Isn't that the restaurant that Luna mentioned before? I think she said that the food there was really great, and it's run by the parent of one of her students. Vivian's eyes suddenly lit up as she recalled why the restaurant's name sounded so familiar. Luna had definitely mentioned it to her last time. Should I go to try out their food? But father says I'm not allowed to go out in the next few days. But if their food really is as delicious as Uncle Robert says, then it would be a shame not to go and taste it. A conflicted expression appeared on Vivian's face. Vivian, come in and have some food if you haven't eaten yet. We've discussed everything, so there's nothing left for you to eavesdrop on. Michael's voice was tinged with a hint of resignation. Ah! I've already eaten. I'll leave you and Uncle Robert to your work. Please continue, I was only passing by. A panicked expression appeared on Vivian's face, and she immediately hurried away. What a naughty little girl! Michael shook his head with a doting smile on his face. Robert looked out the window, and a smile also appeared on his face. He then turned to Michael, and hesitated momentarily before asking, City Lord, is the young mistress still suffering from her illness? She is, and it seems to be getting worse and worse. She can only sleep at night after using fire magic to warm her up. The smile on Michael's face receded as he shook his head. The young mistress is such a kind girl, she'll definitely be fine. Robert's expression also soured a little upon hearing that. Back when he was working at the city lord's castle, the little girl would often ask him to play with her. She was a very interesting girl. I hope so. Michael nodded. He looked at Robert in silence for a while before continuing, Robert, I know what's going on now. You reported the issues within the Catering Association on a few occasions to me in the past as well, but back when the Food Association was taken in by the City Lord's Castle, I promised Warren some things, one of which was not to interfere with his work. However, Warren also promised me that he wouldn't use the association to benefit himself, so I'll do some investigating on this matter. If Warren really has dabbled in corruption, and he's using the Catering Association as a tool, then I definitely won't allow him to keep going down this path. But, City Lord, that restaurant really does have a lot of potential. If President Warren continues to target that restaurant even after removing it from the rankings, then there's a very good chance that it'll be forced to close down. Similar things have happened in the past, so, Robert said in an urgent voice. Robert, the dwarves of the Eason Castle and their neighboring orcs are planning on holding a meeting in Chaos City to discuss the issue of the border soon. The forest trolls and goblins are fighting over an iron mine again. The forest trolls say that the goblins have encroached upon their territory with their excavations, while the goblins say the mine is on their side of the border. The demons have also recently found a way to access Dragon Island by traveling through the Dark Sea, and the inhabitants of Dragon Island are discussing whether they should fill the Dark Sea. As such, I really am very busy, so no matter how exceptional that restaurant is, I won't be able to visit it anytime soon. I'll chase up the matters regarding the Catering Association. You can go back after you have some food. Michael put down his empty bowl before departing. Robert looked on as the door slowly closed, and he fell into silence. He also departed after finishing the food in his bowl. Having worked at the City Lord's castle for more than a decade, he could understand just how much time and energy the City Lord had to expend to take care of daily affairs. Even though those events weren't taking place in Chaos City, a trend where all scuffles between races and species on the Norland continent were reported to Chaos City had developed over the years. If the two sides didn't want a full-blown war to erupt, then they would ask Chaos City to mediate. Chaos City was like a neutral city that mediated all battles, and held a special status on the Norland continent. To Robert, Mamie Restaurant was a restaurant that was worthy of attention, but for the City Lord, he had already gone above and beyond just to listen to him talk so much about the Catering Association. No matter how delicious the food served by a restaurant was, it was still not a place that was noteworthy to the City Lord. After a while of fruitless pondering, Mag chose to give up temporarily. He asked internally, System, if I can't complete the food competition mission due to some circumstances beyond my control, but I already reached number 21 on the rankings board yesterday, does that count as mission being completed? Please do not twist the content of the mission. The mission stipulates that one dish must be in the top 30 of the food competition rankings on the final day. If the restaurant is removed from the rankings board, then you fail the mission, the system said in a non-negotiable voice. Alright, I'm just going to go grill my fish, then. Mag pursed his lips. The system refused to make any exceptions, so he would probably be unable to complete that mission. He washed his hands before making his way over to the fish tank. Boss, is the new dish today going to be made from that really beautiful fish? Yabimiya stood at the entrance to the kitchen with a curious expression. Yes. This is the rainbow fish. Mag nodded with a smile. That name had been assigned to the fish by Amy in the morning, and Mag felt like it was better and less of a mouthful than iridescent scale grass carp. The fish is so beautiful, it must be very delicious. Yabimiya was looking forward to sampling the new dish. Rainbow fish? That's such a beautiful name. Sally was also standing at the entrance to the kitchen, and she looked at the fish that were happily swimming in their tank with a hint of sympathy in her eyes. She really didn't want to see such pretty fish being slaughtered and cooked. By the way, how's your spice tolerance? Mag turned to look at the two of them. I love spicy food. Even if it's super spicy. Yabimiya raised a hand. I usually don't eat any spicy food. Sally shook her head. Elves were one with nature, and very rarely ate meat or foods with intense flavors. Alright, I'll cook a medium spice grilled fish today. The mildly spicy version will be a little too bland. Mag nodded with a smile. Those who didn't often eat spicy food simply had never tasted any good spicy food. Mag was confident that he could make Sally fall in love with his spicy grilled fish. Boss, let me help you kill the fish. I'm really good at it. Yabimiya rolled up her sleeves and walked into the kitchen, but her words came to an abrupt halt as an incredulous expression appeared on her face. A rainbow fish was plucked out of the fish tank, and then quickly killed and cleaned. A series of intricate incisions was made on the body of the fish in a series of almost artistic movements. Killing a fish was supposed to be a mundane task, but Mag made it look very graceful and pleasing to the eye. So cool, Yabimiya sighed with amazement. Mag gave the fish a final rinse, and smiled as he said, I'm also very good at killing fish. Boss is super awesome, much better than I am. Yabimiya nodded in agreement with Mag's words. She had been working in various kitchens for many years, but she definitely couldn't compare with Mag and his exceptional skills. Each and every motion looked as if it had been rehearsed countless times, and he looked so graceful and natural during the process. Mag turned to the two of them, and said, All right, go and have a seat. The marinating process will require some time, I'll call you two when it's ready to eat. Boss, can I watch you cook the fish? I swear I won't try to steal your skills, I'm just curious, Yabimiya implored. Of course you can. Mag nodded. Thank you, boss. Yabimiya was elated as she stood off to the side. Warning! You currently do not have the right to teach your cooking skills to others. Please do not casually agree to show others your cooking. The system's serious voice sounded. Mag began to prepare the condiments for the marinade as he replied calmly, Didn't you hear her? She said she's not trying to steal my skills, and she's just curious. I trust Mia just as much as I distrust you. The system chose to remain silent in the end. Sally hesitated momentarily at the entrance before deciding to sit outside in the end. She supported her intricate chin with her hands, and was slightly dazed as she looked at Mag working in the kitchen. Grilling fish was actually a rather complex process. In particular, if one wanted to make a really delicious grilled fish, then they would have to expend a lot of time and effort. Mag had already prepared the old oil in advance. As 4 people were going to be sampling the fish, he chose a large one. After cooking the same dish countless times in the test field for the god of cookery, he had already completely mastered the skill. He placed the marinated fish into the oven, pulled it out when it was half-cooked to apply a layer of old oil, and then placed it back into the oven. "Boss, what's that box? Why is that the fish gets cooked when you put it inside there?" Yabimiya was very curious about the oven. "That's an oven, and it's designed to grill fish, as well as other things," Mag explained with a smile. Things like ovens were still too advanced for this world. "I get it. So it's like a sealed grilling rack." Yabimiya nodded with a thoughtful expression. She stared at the oven for a while longer before asking, "But this oven doesn't have a furnace or anything, so how is it generating heat?" "This oven doesn't require burning coal to generate heat. Instead, it uses electricity. Electricity flows along this wire into the oven, heating up the heating elements within, which in turn provide heat for the oven. It's a similar concept to the lights in the restaurant," Mag explained. He had already educated Sally and Yabimiya about electricity in the past. After all, there were electrical appliances everywhere in the restaurant, and it would be bad if they were to accidentally electrocute themselves. "I see. Boss, you really are so awesome. You've invented so many quick and convenient things." Yabimiya stared Mag with stars of reverence shimmering in her eyes. "Humph, those were all invented by the system." Eighth Sundara voice sounded in Mag's mind. "We should try and make the most of life." Mag ignored the system's voice, and accepted Yabimiya's adoration with a calm smile. After applying 2 layers of old oil, the golden crispy rainbow fish was taken out of the oven. Its alluring scent wafted through the air, and one could tell that it would be delicious even before tasting it. "It smells so good. So fish can be grilled in this manner. In the past, when I've seen chefs cook grilled fish, it always came out really black and hard." Yabimiya couldn't help but gulp at the sight of the grilled fish. The delicious scent wafted out from within the kitchen, and the dazed Sally caught a whiff of it, upon which her eyes also lit up. That scent reminded her of her younger days, when she went out fishing with Princess Irina, and they grilled the fish that they had caught by the lake. Even though the grilled fish from back then didn't smell as good as Mag's grilled fish, the scent in her memory was still unforgettable for her even to this day. She very rarely ate fish as its many small spiky bones would prick her every time she tried it. She also felt like eating fish was quite inhumane, so she was always burdened by guilt. However, upon catching a whiff of that scent, she was suddenly struck by the urge to taste the fish. A strong sense of desire welled up in her heart, and she sat up involuntarily as if she wanted to see what the fish looked like. Ugly Duckling was sleeping on a stool, and it also abruptly opened its eyes as it turned toward the kitchen. It inhaled with all its might, and excitement appeared on its face as it clawed at the stool as if it couldn't wait even a second longer to sink its fangs into the fish. "Father, I'm back." Amy's voice sounded along with a few knocks of the door. Sally opened the door for her. "Hello, big sister Aisha," Amy greeted as she skipped through the door. She immediately caught a whiff of the delicious scent, and her eyes abruptly lit up. "It smells so good, is that the smell of fish?" Amy rushed over to the kitchen, and picked up the frantic Ugly Duckling with her arms. She stood at the entrance to the kitchen, and looked on with an expectant gaze as she asked, "Father, is the rainbow fish done? Amy and Ugly Duckling both really want to eat it." Meow. Ugly Duckling stared at the grilled fish on the cooking bench, and reached for it with its paws as if it wanted to claim it for itself. "Yes, almost done. Go wash your hands and sit outside. The fish will be cooked soon." Mag stirred the chili and wild pepper in his wok. A spicy yet non-intrusive scent wafted through the air as the ingredients simmered. "Yay!" Amy was very elated as she placed Ugly Duckling on the ground. She rolled up her sleeves, washed her hand, and quickly sat down at the table. Sizzle! The fried chili and wild pepper were poured onto the grilled fish, creating a sizzling sound. The spiciness quickly seeped into the grilled fish, and the familiar smell brought a smile to Mag's face. He sprinkled some chopped green onions onto the dish, and the spicy grilled fish was complete. "Boss, you really are a genius. I've never seen fish cooked like that, nor have I ever seen such a perfect fish dish." Yabimiya stared at Mag with reverence in her eyes. She had been completely won over. Wash your hands, let's eat. We'll be having this grilled fish for lunch, Mag said with a smile. It was quite a good feeling to be praised and worshipped. An alcohol stove was brought out on top of a stainless steel plate to be placed under the fish. He also added some mung bean starch cellophane noodles to the dish. The quality of the ingredients was much more important than the number of ingredients. Besides, he really did love cellophane noodles. The crispy golden grilled fish was half a meter long, and its rainbow color was still faintly visible. In particular, the head and tail still retained their beautiful color. Red juices were poured over the fish, obscuring the onion and cellophane noodles underneath. Bright red dried chili and wild pepper were sprinkled on top along with chopped green onions, creating a beautiful sight. Gulp! All 4 people sitting at the table gulped in unison. It's such a beautiful fish. The smell is irresistible. It looks like a lot of chili was used, but the scent isn't sharp at all. I can't believe a spicy dish could be so alluring. Just eating a little bit should be fine, right? Sally stared at the grilled fish with astonishment in her eyes. She clearly didn't like fish nor spicy food, but Mag's cooking made the two simply irresistible. It must be super delicious. Yabimiya was full of anticipation. She had seen the entire cooking process. During that time, she discovered that Mag's hands seemed to hold some sort of magical power. Even though there were some ingredients that she didn't recognize, she was still stunned by how Mag was able to combine them into a dish that was perfect in taste, color, and aroma. At the same time, she was even more eager to taste the dish. Meow! Ugly Duckling scratched the leg of a chair to express its displeasure. It really wanted someone to carry it onto the table so it could see the dish for itself. Have a taste. This spicy grilled fish is the new dish that I'll be releasing today. Let's taste test it ourselves first. Mag picked up his chopsticks, and severed the most succulent part of the fish. As his chopsticks sliced through the flesh of the fish, the vibrant red juices instantly seeped in, staining its soft white flesh red. Its delicious flavor was sealed in, and Mag placed it in Amy's bowl. He looked at her with a smile, and cautioned, "Be careful, there could be fish bones in there." Amy nodded with elation, and picked up her chopsticks with one hand while holding her bowl in her other hand. She put the fish into her mouth, and her expression immediately lit up. So this is what fish tastes like. It's so delicious. But, it's a little spicy. The succulent fish meat was enveloped in spicy juices, and a layer of crispy fish skin. Amy chewed a few times before sticking out her little tongue, and turned to Mag with amazement in her eyes as she said, "Father, I want more. I want to eat more fish. Fish is so delicious, and there weren't any bones, either. Father is the best. All right, here comes more fish." Amy had her tongue stuck out like a little puppy, creating an extremely adorable sight. Mag smiled, and delivered another morsel of fish into her bowl. Just as the system had promised, the fish had no small fish bones, so it was much more convenient to eat. Amy looked like she was thoroughly enjoying herself, and Sally and Yabimiya couldn't help but extend their chopsticks in unison to taste the fish for themselves. Sally inspected the fish between her chopstick with wonder in her eyes. The fish meat was so soft and delicate that it would be severed if she were to exert just a bit more force. However, it still had structural integrity and a great texture. The red juice had perfectly encapsulated the fish, and a delicious spicy aroma wafted through the air. She was already salivating involuntarily before even placing the morsel of fish in her mouth. She hesitated momentarily before giving it a taste. Oh! It's so spicy! As soon as she placed the morsel of fish meat in her mouth, the spicy juices erupted. Sally felt as if there were sparks flying in her mouth, just as if countless tiny fire magic spells had been unleashed. Her taste buds were instantly awakened, but her tongue seemed to go numb for a split second before coming back to its senses. In contrast with the spicy juices, the flavor of the soft and succulent fish made Sally feel as if she had fallen into a clear blue ocean, where a school of rainbow fish swam beside her, striking her with the urge to strip off her clothes and swim together with them. So this was the unique taste of the ocean. It was delicious. As she swallowed the fish meat, she felt as if a ball of fire was sliding down her throat. A burning sensation immediately spread throughout her entire body, making her sit bolt upright involuntarily as a gentle moan escaped her lips. Rib! A tearing sound erupted, and one of the buttons at the front of Sally's kipao flew through the air, revealing a small patch of snowy white skin and a sliver of black lace. Ngh, almost at the same time, Yabimiya also moaned as she swallowed the fish in her mouth. 2 buttons detached themselves from the front of her maid dress. Even though she was quite petite, her chest development was quite advanced, so an alluring section of cleavage was revealed. What the hell? Mag was just about to taste the fish for himself when he was abruptly rooted to his seat. He took a deliberate glance before shitting his gaze away. Why was he suddenly receiving fan service like this? He hadn't put anything strange into the dish. Big sister Aisha, big sister Mia, your little bunnies are showing, hee hee. Amy chuckled as she looked at the 2 of them. Both of them lowered their heads in unison, and only then did they discover that they had suffered from wardrobe malfunction. Arg! Arg! 2 sharp screams erupted almost in unison. After a brief panicked scuffle, Sally and Yabimiya sat down in their seats, both of them as red as beetroots. Their eyes were downcast, and the atmosphere suddenly became a little awkward. Mag hesitated momentarily before choosing to break the silence. I actually didn't see anything, so you don't have to worry. Sally and Yabimiya both turned to look at Mag with skepticism written all over their faces. They both clearly saw Mag stare at them for a moment before turning away. Then, I'll be digging in. Mag was a little sheepish as he turned his gaze away. The situation had transpired very abruptly, and he had stared for a moment, just as any normal man would. He placed a morsel of fish into his mouth, and the rich juices, crispy skin, succulent flesh, and spicy flavor immediately captivated his senses. What a satisfying feeling! Mag swallowed the fish and exhaled. He suddenly understood what he had been looking for while searching through one grilled fish restaurant after another. This is the feeling. This is the flavor. This the grilled fish I'm looking for. It was the perfect grilled fish in his heart. If someone were to ask Mag how he was able to cook so many delicious dishes, he discovered that he now knew how to answer them. I've been searching for delicious cuisine all my life, until I discovered that no one's cooking could meet my standards. Hence, I took it upon myself to create food of that standard. It was a very arrogant response. However, Mag felt like that was truly the reason why he had picked up cooking and was able to practice relentlessly in the test field for the god of cookery in order to perfect a single dish. He wanted to cook food that was truly perfect in his heart, and he wanted Amy to taste that food as well. He wanted to tell all those chefs who supposedly stood at the pinnacle of the cooking world that higher standards and demands should provide motivation for them, not be seen as unreasonable complaints. With that in mind, Mag was feeling quite touched by himself. Father, why are you crying? Is it because the fish is too spicy? Amy looked up at Mag with concern in her eyes. Oh, it's not that. I just recalled some things because of this grilled fish. Mag blinked away the tears with a slightly awkward expression. To think that he had been brought to tears by himself. Let's enjoy this fish. After the meal, we'll have to start working again. Mag took a glance at the clock on the wall before turning to Sally and Yabimiya. Even though the events that had just transpired were a little awkward, he had been through many tumultuous events, and such a minor incident wasn't enough to faze him. Furthermore, Sally and Yabimiya were like little sisters to him. He had no intention of making one of Amy's big sisters her stepmother instead. Mag was no saint, but he certainly wasn't a promiscuous man, either. In his past life, he had met countless beauties, but refrained from sexual relationships. In this life, he had Amy, so he naturally had to be even more careful. His lifelong goal was to become a role model stay-at-home dad. Mag was not in a hurry to get into a relationship. Fate would decide all that for him. Furthermore, his daughter had a mother. Even though he didn't have any recollection of or feelings toward Irina, she was still Amy's biological mother. Perhaps nothing would eventuate between the two of them, but before meeting her again, Mag wanted to make himself look like a responsible man with good self-control. Only then could he prove that he was a good father to Amy, providing her with comfortable living conditions as well as a good environment for her to thrive in. That was his responsibility as a man and a father. At times, even Mag had to admit that he was a bit pretentious, and wasn't honest enough with himself, but he preferred to live like that. I must have buttoned up my clothes too tightly this morning, causing the buttons to come off after tasting that delicious fish, so Boss Mag can't be blamed. But this is already the second time that this has happened. Mother told me that if a man were to see my body, I would have no choice but to marry him. So, will I have to marry Mag? But Mag already has Amy, so he must have a wife as well. In that case, would he still want me? Yabimiya thought to herself with a conflicted expression. Her gaze then fell on the grilled fish on the table, and she gulped. This grilled fish really is super delicious. If I were to marry Mag, I would be able to eat all types of delicious foods every day, right? When I think about it that way, marrying him seems like a really blissful option. He didn't see anything, right? My grandma told me that if a man that's not my husband were to see my body, I should either kill him or gouge his eyes out. Sally glanced at Mag out of the corner of her eyes, and she was also quite conflicted. But he didn't do it on purpose, it's the grilled fish that was at fault. Come to think of it, this grilled really is delicious. Screw it. Let's eat first. The same thought flashed through Sally and Yabimiya's minds in unison. They took a glance at each other before picking up their chopsticks, and extracting another morsel of fish for themselves. This time, they had learned their lesson, and laid a hand over their chests before eating the fish. The spicy flavor wreaked havoc within their mouths, striking them with an unprecedented feeling. It was completely different from when they had eaten purely spicy foods in the past. In contrast, this type of spiciness brought with it a numbing sensation, but it was utterly delectable at the same time, and in conjunction with the succulent fish, it presented an irresistible package. One mouthful of fish was devoured after another. The simplest and most effective way to repress the burning sensation in their mouths was to keep on eating. Sweat covered their foreheads, but in the face of such delicious food, that didn't matter. Delicious food really is the best thing for alleviating awkward situations. Mag heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing that. He looked down at Ugly Duckling, which was trying its best to climb up his leg, and he smiled as he picked up its little dish. He placed 2 morsels of fish on the dish, and put on a serious expression as he said, "Ugly Duckling, this fish is super spicy. You need to make sure that you can handle it before you decide whether to eat it or not. Ugly Duckling, if you eat that spicy fish, you might explode." Amy also adopted a serious expression as she panted with her little tongue protruding from her mouth. It was really spicy, but super delicious. Meow. Ugly Duckling nodded its little head, and immediately pounced on the fish meat. It took a sniff before biting down impatiently. Meow. A loud cry escaped its mouth as it sprang up over half a meter on the spot. Its soft fur immediately stood up on its ends, transforming it into a small ball of orange fluff, and it skipped around on the spot like a rubber ball, creating an SAHDR cable sight. Ha ha ha, Ugly Duckling, you're so stupid. Amy doubled over with laughter. Mag also burst into laughter as he shook his head. On one occasion, back when he was eating grilled fish in Sichuan, a cat in the shop sat at his feet, and ate about a quarter of a spicy grilled fish with even greater spice tolerance than he had. That was why he decided to give Ugly Duckling some spicy grilled fish, but it appeared that it couldn't contend with that Sichuan cat. Ugly Duckling stared at the fish in the dish with shock and horror, and only stopped jumping around after a long time. Ugly Duckling, do you still want to eat it? Amy asked. Meow. Ugly Duckling hurriedly shook its head, and licked its lips. It stared at the fish for a while longer with a conflicted expression before making its way toward the dish again. It had another sniff, and took another bite, upon which it transformed into a bouncing orange fur ball again. Your mouth says no, but your body is quite honest. Mag chuckled as he shook his head. He turned his attention away from Ugly Duckling, which was basking in both pain and pleasure, and picked up a strand of cellophane noodles for himself. The semi-transparent cellophane noodles had already absorbed the red juice, giving it a translucent and glittering red color. Slurp. The smooth and slippery vermicelli was slurped into Mag's mouth. The spicy juices coupled with its bouncy texture created a heavenly combo. When eating grilled fish, Mag could make do without other secondary ingredients, but mung bean starch cellophane noodles were a must. To him, it was just as important as the grilled fish. Amy's eyes lit up upon seeing that, and she wheedled, "Father, what's that bouncy stuff? I want it too. These are cellophane noodles. They're very delicious as well." Mag placed a couple of strands of noodles into Amy's bowl with a smile. Amy picked up a noodle with her chopsticks, and blew on it carefully before emulating Mag, slurping it into her mouth. She chewed happily, nodding with elation as she said, "Cellophane noodles really are super delicious, just as delicious as fish." Even though there was a slightly awkward interlude, the meal still concluded amid a joyful atmosphere. Sally and Yabimiya were covered in sweat, and they each downed a glass of iced water before heaving sighs of contentment. The awkwardness from before had been completely forgotten by them. "Father, can I keep this fish bone? I want to show it to Daphne." Amy looked up at Mag with anticipation in her eyes. "Of course you can. During your rest days, you can invite your little friends here if you like. I'll cook delicious grilled fish for all of you." Mag nodded with a smile. That Daphne seemed to be very close with Amy, and when he thought about it, he realized that Amy had never invited any of her friends over. "Can I really do that? Daphne loves fish, and Jessica hasn't even had fish before. Can I invite them over as well?" Amy's eyes immediately lit up. "Of course. You can invite anyone you want." Mag nodded with a smile. "Yay! Father, you're the best." Amy latched onto Mag's hand and jumped up and down with joy. Sally and Yabimiya looked at their interaction with gentle smiles on their faces. Amy really was lucky to have such a doting father. "I'll help you pack up the fish bones." Mag stood up, and carefully plucked the fish bones out of the steel dish with his chopsticks. That fish only had a spine, as well as a series of large bones to maintain its body's structural integrity. The flesh had been completely cleaned off the bones by the four of them during the meal, so it only had to be rinsed clean with some water. Such a delicious fish aroma. Could it be that the new dish Mag is releasing tonight is related to fish? Not only can I smell fish, there's also a rich spicy scent in the air. I'm already salivating. I really like spicy food as well. I thought from Mag's other dishes that he wasn't into cooking spicy food, but it looks like I'm in luck. Customers began to flood in as the restaurant doors were opened again. Soon, they detected the delicious scent wafting through the air, and they began to discuss spiritedly among themselves. The new dish tonight does indeed have something to do with fish, but I'll reveal the specific dish tonight. Mag nodded with a mysterious smile. Father's not home for dinner tonight, so I should be able to get away with sneaking out for a meal, right? In the backyard of the city lord's castle, Vivian had changed from her regal blue robes into a set of male clothing. Her gorgeous long hair was casually tied up with a strip of fabric, and she had stuck a mustache above her upper lip, transforming into a handsome young man. After making sure that there was no one around, Vivian climbed onto the tree beside the wall of the courtyard, stepped onto the wall, and landed gently on the other side. Just like that, she made it out of the city lord's castle. She glanced around nervously again before adopting a natural expression, and walking along the street. There weren't many pedestrians on the streets, so no one had noticed Vivian jumping over the city lord's castle's wall. She took a deep breath, and strolled toward the Aiden Square in a leisurely manner. He's, on the second floor of a restaurant by the side of the street, Skonard sat in a booth in a set of lavish red robes. He swirled the wine in his glass as he looked out the window, upon which he caught sight of Vivian. He had seen her jump over the wall, and his eyes narrowed slightly in contemplation before his expression lit up as he murmured to himself, "Isn't that young Mistress Vivian? I was wondering what kind of burglar would dare to rob the city lord's castle, but it turns out it's just young Mistress Vivian in male clothing. I wasn't able to speak to her much during the banquet that was held a few days ago, so this is an opportunity for me. It's about to become dark soon, so perhaps I would have the chance to escort young Master Vivian home. Maybe the city lord will develop a good impression of me then, and I can show my father that I'm not just some spendthrift alcoholic." Skonard put down his wineglass, and bade farewell to his group of shady friends before going downstairs. Skonard's father was an ambassador of the Roth Empire that had been sent to Chaos City. As such, he was able to participate in a banquet held in the city lord's castle with his father, and it was love at first sight for him when he saw young Mistress Vivian. However, they didn't share any common interests, so their conversation went stale after exchanging just a few sentences. He had been searching for information about Vivian for the past few days, but most of the people that he inquired advised him to give up. Young Mistress Vivian was the city lord's prized jewel, and very rarely even left the castle, let alone interact with other men. To think that she dares to disguise herself as a man and jump over the wall of the city lord's castle, perhaps she has a wild side, after all. A smile appeared on Skonard's face as he hid behind a tree and spied on Vivian from there. If he could have the city lord's only daughter for himself, then his father would be forced to look at him in different light. "Is this the place? It looks really nice, and it's so busy. Looks like all types of strange beings are forced to dine at the same table due to seat shortage." Vivian stopped outside Mamie Restaurant, and looked inside through the window. There was still a long line gathered straight down the center of the restaurant, and her brows furrowed slightly as she inspected the scenes unfolding within the restaurant. She didn't discriminate against other races and species, but she was slightly misophobic, so she didn't really want to dine with unfamiliar beings at the same table, especially when among them were dwarves and orcs, who were certainly not renowned for their cleanliness. "Should I go in?" Vivian was quite hesitant. All of a sudden, a customer exited the restaurant, and an irresistible aroma of spicy grilled fish wafted toward her before being cut off as the door automatically closed. Gulp! Vivian gulped as her legs carried her almost involuntarily toward the restaurant. She laid her hand on the door handle, and even then, she was still saying to herself, "I'm not attracted by the fish. It's just that Uncle Robert says that it would be a shame for this restaurant to fall into disrepute, so I'm just here to do some investigating." So she really did come out to have a good meal. That's a good thing, I'll be able to show her my gentlemanly side in the restaurant. A confident smile appeared on Skonard's face as he stood outside his restaurant. He adjusted his collar before opening the door, and entering the restaurant. Looking into the restaurant from the outside, Vivian had thought that it would be a very loud and rowdy place. Only after going in did she discover to her surprise that it was actually rather quiet there. Aside from a few involuntary gasps of praise from customers as they enjoyed their meals, all of the conversations were in hushed tones. Even orcs have learned to whisper? Vivian raised an eyebrow at the sight of two orcs conversing with one another in quiet voices. She had never seen that in any other restaurant before. Furthermore, in this restaurant, there were orcs and elves sitting at the same table. Tensions had risen significantly between demons and dwarves as of late, but they were dining together in an almost shoulder-to-shoulder proximity here. Vivian had lived in Chaos City all her life, and she was struggling to believe her eyes. Just what had made all of the creatures here forget their differences? However, her gaze was soon drawn to the large red fish on a steel platter on one of the dining tables. The rich spicy aroma combined perfectly with the delectable scent of the fish. It was the same aroma that she had caught a whiff of outside the restaurant. Ever since she was little, her favorite food had always been fish. She detested having to pick out the small annoying fish bones, but that still didn't hamper her love of fish. However, despite having fish countless times in her life, she had never seen fish cooked in that manner before. The fish appeared to have been grilled to perfection, and had been drenched with delectable red juice, then sprinkled with chilies, wild peppers, and spring onion. She saw an orc put a morsel of fish meat into his mouth, upon which his eyes immediately widened as if he had tasted something incredible. His face also quickly turned from green to red, and he opened his mouth as if he wanted to spit out the fish, but he simply couldn't bring himself to do so. Thus, he swallowed the fish with a conflicted expression before heaving a content sigh. After panting momentarily, the orc had another mouthful of fish. He was clearly unable to handle the spiciness, but simply couldn't bear to spit out the fish, and his face was soon drenched in sweat. Even so, his chopsticks refused to stop, shoveling morsels of fish into his mouth one after another while his face was twisted with pain and pleasure. Gulp! Vivian gulped. She was jealous of what an orc was eating. Even she found that to be unbelievable. His table manners were absolutely horrible, but he was clearly thoroughly enjoying himself. He was completely immersed in the flavor of the dish. Just what kind of flavor could captivate someone so thoroughly? Also, the fish doesn't appear to have any small fish bones. What was even more surprising to Vivian was that the orc didn't even stop once to spit out any bones as he ate. Right at that moment, a warm voice cut off Vivian's train of thought. "Hi there, we have a seat open over there, you can have a seat there and make your order." Vivian turned to look at Yabimiya, upon which a hint of surprise appeared on her face. She wasn't expecting to see a half-dragon waitress. That was something that she hadn't seen for a long time in any restaurant in the Aden Square. However, the half-dragon girl really was very beautiful. In particular, the smile on her face exuded a special type of charisma, which instantly lifted one's mood. Furthermore, the dress she was wearing was also quite interesting. Vivian was wondering if it was a new style, and thought that she would have to shop for it next time with Luna. Even though Yabimiya was already used to serving customers, she still couldn't help but blush as she was scrutinized by a handsome young man. He also had a mustache like Mag did, but in Yabimiya's eyes, she felt like Mag was more handsome, and more manly as well. Vivian also realized that staring at Yamabiya was a little rude, so she turned away to look at a dwarf couple leaving the restaurant. There was only a fish skeleton left on their steel platter, and traces of red grease could be seen on the table and chairs, which made Vivian furrow her brows slightly. Right at that moment, Sally quickly strode over to pack up the stove and platter before casually unleashing a water ball magic spell. The oil and grime on the table and chairs were instantly cleansed. Her spell was countless times more effective than wiping down the surfaces with a rag. Using a water-type elven magic caster to clean the tables? The boss here must be a genius. Vivian's instantly lit up. She strode over, and sat down before running her finger along the surface of the table. There wasn't even as much as a hint of residual water or grease that stained her finger as a result, and even with her misophobic tendencies, she found the level of cleanliness impeccable. Even though it wasn't a private booth, the service was still exemplary, and worthy of a 5-star rating. "I want that type of fish." Vivian pointed at the grilled fish on a neighboring table. "That's our spicy grilled fish. Please have a look at the menu and choose the size of the fish, as well as the level of spiciness you would like." Yabimiya smiled as she indicated toward the menu on the table. "I can pick the size and spiciness." Vivian was a little surprised as she picked up the menu. The leather exterior was very pleasant to the touch. "No need to look at that, we'll have one of everything. As for that fish, we'll get the biggest and most delicious one," a voice suddenly interjected before Vivian even had a chance to open the menu. Sconard strode over to Vivian, and gave her a smile that he thought to be quite gentlemanly. "Greetings, brother. I feel like we have an affinity with one another, so let me pay for your meal today." A hint of displeasure flashed through Vivian's eyes at the sight of Sconard, and she replied, "No thanks, I've got money." "Isn't that the guy that was harassing me during the banquet a few days ago? He's always wearing those hideous red robes, what's wrong with his fashion standards?" She wasn't expecting to meet him today, but she was in disguise, so he should not have been able to recognize her. With that in mind, Vivian remained quite calm and collected. There is no most delicious spiciness when it comes to the spicy grilled fish. It is a matter of personal preference, and is to be based on the individual customer's spice tolerance. Yabimiya smiled. She wasn't very fond of this pompous rich boy, either. Sconard's expression stiffened upon being rejected by Vivian, and he was even more enraged by the retort delivered by this half-dragon waitress. However, he still had to keep his cool and maintain a gentlemanly facade in front of Vivian. As such, he looked around at the bustling tables, and said, "I'm reserving this entire restaurant tonight. Tell your boss to come out and evict everyone here, state a price, and I'll deliver. I'd like to have some peace and quiet when I'm eating. Of course, you can stay with me, brother." Everyone in the restaurant turned to look at Sconard after hearing his bold declaration. All of them harbored intense animosity toward him. If he were to reserve the entire restaurant, no one else would be able to dine there, and that was unacceptable to them. It was the first time anyone had ever tried to reserve the entire restaurant. Master Urian was still enjoying the grilled fish that he had ordered, and everyone wondered what his reaction would be if this Sconard tried to kick everyone out of the restaurant. With that in mind, a hint of mockery appeared on everyone's faces. This young buck clearly hadn't done his homework before he decided to flex. He might be hailing from a rich family, but there were about 10 people sitting in Mamie restaurant at that very moment that were just as rich, if not even richer, than his father. Furthermore, there were at least 20 customers that could slam him out of the restaurant with a single slap. "I also like peace and quiet when I eat." Urian glanced up at Sconard, but didn't do anything aside from continuing to dine on his spicy grilled fish. His tongue had already gone numb from the spiciness, but he could still clearly taste its delicious flavor. What came as even more of a pleasant surprise to him was that after swallowing the mouthfuls of fish, a scorching sensation ran through his entire body. His legs were perpetually stiff from influxes of frosty energy, but they were warmed up by the dish, and that frosty energy was being expelled from his body. He was also experiencing the same feeling with his hunched back, and as he continued to eat, his back seemed to be straightening out. Urian had tried to find many ways to keep out the cold. At night, he slept on a bed that was carved out of a 10,000-year-old fire rock, which was excavated from the depths of a lava lake, and he also drank a glass of fire fruit juice every day, but neither of those was too effective. Over the years, the frosty energy had already delved deep into his bones, and couldn't be removed through normal methods. He didn't have many years left to live anyway, so he had given up on looking for new ways to relieve those symptoms. However, the Rigiamo that Mag had released gave him hope, and the new spicy grilled fish made him even more optimistic that he would be able to completely expel the frosty energy within his body. The scorching sensation flowed deep into his bone marrow, reducing the frosty energy and excess humidity in his body to nothingness. The process wasn't a very fast or drastic one, but he could clearly sense the frosty energy receding within his body, and the pain in his back and legs had been alleviated significantly. If he continued to eat the dish every day, it wouldn't be long until all of the frosty energy in his body was completely eradicated. Perhaps he would even be able to straighten out his back in that case. Even though he didn't have many years left, why wouldn't he want to live his remaining years in a greater comfort? Furthermore, the remedy wasn't some foul-tasting medicine, but this delicious grilled fish, so it really was a win-win situation. Sconard took a glance at Urian, but didn't think much of the hunchbacked old man. He was thoroughly basking in all of the attention he was receiving. Of course, Chaos City wasn't Rodu, so he knew that he had to be a bit more careful, which was why he was asking the boss of the restaurant to evict all the customers, and he was willing to pay to reserve the restaurant. He felt like what he was doing was very gentlemanly and heroic. Vivian was the city lord's daughter, so she naturally couldn't dine with all these demons, dwarves, and orcs. When he thought about how he would be able to dine in private with Vivian, his heart began to flutter. His actions would surely leave a good impression in her heart. Is this guy retarded? Vivian shot a disdainful glance at Skonard. She'd only wanted to have a meal, but this guy was skipping around like a clown, putting on a really annoying show. Furthermore, she was dressed as a man, but this guy was still trying to curry favor with her. With that in mind, a peculiar feeling welled up in her heart. She shifted her gaze away from Skonard, and thought to herself, is he gay? Vivian shuddered delicately as that thought occurred to her, and she unconsciously scooted away from him. How about it? Skonard looked at Yabimiya with a smug expression as he raised his voice an octave. He was going to teach this half-dragon girl a lesson for talking back to him. Yabimiya was at a loss for what to do as she looked at Skonard. She hadn't ever encountered a situation like this before, and she didn't know what should be done. Skonard appeared to be quite a rich customer, so she didn't want to offend him. Sorry, but our restaurant is not available for reservation. Right at that moment, Mag emerged from the kitchen with a plate of Yangzhou fried rice. He placed the dish on a customer's table before walking over to Yabimiya, and appraised Skonard with a smile. Furthermore, our restaurant is very expensive, so you might not be able to afford it. All of the customers smiled upon hearing Mag's words. As expected of Boss Mag, even his retort was delivered in such a civilized and calm manner. Vivian looked up at Mag with a hint of surprise, upon which her eyes lit up. It appeared that he was the genius chef that Robert was referring to and the interesting parent of Luna's student. His cropped brown hair was very clean and uniform, and the mustache on his angular face gave him a slightly rogue air. His tailored chef's suit was pristine and tight-fitting, making it very pleasing to the eye compared to the greasy uniforms that chefs often wore. He's pretty handsome. Also, I give full marks for that mustache. Vivian thought to herself. Compared to the mature Mag, the rash and impulsive Skonard completely paled in terms of attraction. That's just my opinion on his appearance, it's not like I have any interest in him. I'm just here to eat. Vivian took her eyes off Mag. It was quite satisfying to hear Mag deliver a retort to the annoying Skonard. She didn't think that there was a restaurant owner who would refuse a customer's request to reserve their restaurant, and also throw in a sly "you might not be able to afford it" on the end. He was indeed an interesting guy. You're the boss here. Skonard also faltered momentarily upon hearing Mag's words. He didn't that he would be rejected in such a straightforward manner, and insulted as well. If he let things slide, then the scintillating image that he had just established in front of Vivian would collapse. That would be unacceptable. Skonard was on the verge of flaring up with rage as he glowered at Mag. I may be wealthier than you can imagine. I'm reserving this restaurant today no matter what. Just state your price. This was just a small restaurant in a corner of the Aiden Square. Even if they did have more customers than other restaurants of the same scale, how expensive could it be? If worse came to worst, then he would just have to pay for everyone's meals and evict them thereafter. He had many gold coins and dragon coins on him, and those should be more than enough. Reserving our restaurant may be more expensive than you can imagine as well. Mag was not very fond of rich boys who were constantly trying to flex like him. As Skonard's expression became more and more twisted with rage, he smiled, and said, "If you want to reserve the restaurant, you'll have to pay at least twice the amount of money the restaurant would make tonight, right? The evening service is the main source of the restaurant's revenue, so you'll have to pay 1 million copper coins. Furthermore, you'll have to pay for everyone's meals, as well as an additional consolation fee, which will cost you 100,000 copper coins. Reserving the restaurant would negatively impact the restaurant's reputation, which would result in a future reduction of profits, which you'll have to pay 100,000 copper coins for as well. Thus, the total will come to 1,200,000 copper coins, in cash.